The weathered cuneiform tablets discovered in the ruins of Nippur between 1888 and 1900 contain some of the most enigmatic references to prehistoric governance ever found in Mesopotamian literature. Among the thousands of fragments catalogued by the University of Pennsylvania expeditions, a particular group of early dynastic period Sumerian texts stands out for their unusual content, describing what scholars have termed the primordial administration. These tablets, dating to approximately 3200–2900 BC, represent the earliest documented accounts of Earth's management before human civilization emerged according to Sumerian records. The most significant of these tablets, designated as CBS 10673 in the University Museum's collection, contains a detailed account written in archaic Sumerian script that differs markedly from contemporary administrative documents. The text begins with standard invocations to the Council of Seven who descended, but quickly shifts to describe an organizational structure that governed Earth during what it calls the time before the black-headed people, the Sumerian term for humanity, walked the land. What makes this document particularly intriguing is its matter-of-fact administrative tone, lacking the typical mythological flourishes found in most Sumerian religious texts. Archaeological evidence from Nippur itself supports the narrative found in these tablets. Excavations in the temple precinct revealed construction layers extending far deeper than the earliest known Sumerian settlements, with architectural techniques that appear fully developed rather than showing gradual evolution. The precision of stone fitting in these deepest layers, the sophistication of drainage systems, and the astronomical alignments incorporated into foundation stones all suggest the existence of an advanced organizational system that predated known human occupation of the site by centuries or even millennia. If this evidence challenges what you thought you knew about the origins of human civilization, consider subscribing to follow this investigation further as we examine the systematic documentation that ancient scribes preserved regarding Earth's administration before humanity's rise to dominance. The Eridu Genesis, one of the oldest creation narratives known to humanity, contains passages that have long puzzled scholars, but take on new significance when examined as historical documentation rather than mythology. This ancient text, preserved in fragmentary form on tablets from the Old Babylonian period, but clearly based on much earlier Sumerian sources, includes references to beings who established the first cities and organized the Earth's resources before humanity achieved civilization. The language used in these passages differs substantially from typical mythological descriptions of divine activities, employing terminology more commonly associated with administrative or engineering reports. The most complete version of the Eridu Genesis appears on tablet CBS 10,469, discovered during the University of Pennsylvania expeditions to Nippur and currently housed in the University Museum's collection. The text describes a period when the Earth was young and cities had not yet been built, when cultivation had not been established, and when humanity existed in a primitive state requiring guidance and organization. What distinguishes this account from typical creation? Mythology is its focus on systematic development of infrastructure, resource management, and the establishment of administrative centers rather than supernatural acts of creation. The tablet describes how Eridu was established as the first city, not through divine decree alone, but through what the text terms the lowering of kingship from heaven. This lowering involved the physical descent of administrative authority, along with the technical knowledge and organizational systems necessary for urban civilization. The text provides specific details about the establishment of water management systems, the organization of labor forces, and the introduction of agricultural techniques that transform the marshy lands of southern Mesopotamia into productive farmland capable of supporting large populations. Archaeological evidence from Eridu itself supports the historical foundation of these textual accounts. Excavations conducted by Fuad Safar between 1946 and 1949 revealed 17 distinct building levels at the site, with the deepest layers showing construction techniques that appear fully developed rather than exhibiting the gradual evolution typical of most ancient settlements. The earliest temple structures at Eridu demonstrate sophisticated understanding of architectural principles, including load-bearing calculations, foundation engineering in unstable marsh soils, and the integration of astronomical alignments into building orientations. The precision of these earliest construction levels becomes even more remarkable when examined in detail. Foundation stones weighing several tons were positioned with tolerances measured in millimeters, creating perfectly level platforms despite the challenging soil conditions of the region. The drainage systems incorporated gradient calculations that optimize water flow while preventing erosion and structural undermining. These engineering achievements required mathematical knowledge and surveying capabilities that conventional archaeology attributes to much later periods of Mesopotamian development. The Eridu Genesis describes the beings who established this first city as possessing knowledge of the sacred mies, fundamental principles that governed all aspects of civilization. The text indicates these administrators brought with them complete systems for urban organization, rather than teaching primitive humans through gradual instruction. This pattern of sudden civilizational emergence without apparent developmental stages appears consistently throughout the archaeological record of early Sumerian sites, challenging conventional models of cultural evolution that predict gradual advancement from simple to complex social structures. Linguistic analysis of the Eridu Genesis reveals additional evidence supporting its interpretation as historical documentation. The Sumerian terminology used to describe the pre-human administrators employs words that carry connotations of technical expertise and organizational authority rather than supernatural power. The term, often translated as gods, more accurately renders as those who from above came, emphasizing their origin from a different location rather than their divine nature. Similarly, references to their activities use vocabulary associated with construction, resource allocation, and systematic planning rather than miraculous intervention. The text describes the establishment of 5 cities before the flood, each serving specific administrative functions within a coordinated network. Eridu functioned as the primary center for water management and agricultural development. Bad Tibira specialized in metallurgical operations and craft production. Larak served as an astronomical observation center. Sippar maintained communication systems and record-keeping functions. Shuruppak coordinated distribution networks and resource allocation across the entire system. This functional specialization and coordinated planning indicates sophisticated organizational capabilities that exceeded what would be expected from early human settlements developing independently. The implications of viewing the Eridu Genesis as historical documentation rather than mythology extend far beyond academic interpretation of ancient texts. If these accounts preserve genuine memories of a pre-human administrative system that established the foundations of Mesopotamian civilization, then the sudden appearance of advanced urban culture around 3500 BC represents not the beginning of civilization, but rather its re-emergence after a catastrophic interruption. The flood narrative that divides the Eridu Genesis into pre- and post-diluvian periods may document an actual event that destroyed the original administrative infrastructure and required human populations to rebuild civilization using preserved knowledge and surviving organizational systems. Sumerian texts consistently reference the Abzu as a realm beneath the earth that served as both a source of fresh water and a domain of administrative authority. However, archaeological discoveries at Eridu and other early Sumerian sites reveal that the Abzu concept may have described actual underground infrastructure rather than purely mythological space. Excavations conducted by the Iraqi Department of Antiquities between 1946 and 1949 uncovered extensive subterranean chambers beneath the Abzu temple complex that incorporated sophisticated hydraulic engineering and demonstrated construction capabilities that exceeded documented Sumerian technological achievements. The underground chambers at Eridu extend to depths of 12 meters below the temple foundation. carved through layers of clay and limestone using techniques that left smooth, precisely angled walls. The chambers incorporate ventilation shafts that maintain air circulation without external openings, suggesting understanding of atmospheric pressure differentials and convection principles. Water channels carved into the chamber floors connect the regional water table, with gradients calculated to maintain constant flow rates, regardless of seasonal variations in groundwater levels. The engineering precision required for these hydraulic systems indicates access to sophisticated surveying equipment and mathematical modelling capabilities. Chemical analysis of the chamber walls reveals treatment with compounds including cedar oil, bitumen, and metallic salts that created antimicrobial environments, protecting the spaces from biological degradation. This preservation technology maintained stable conditions within the chambers for millennia, enabling the storage of materials that would have decayed rapidly in typical environmental conditions. The deliberate application of these preservative treatments and the careful environmental engineering of the underground spaces suggest they were designed for long-term preservation of important materials rather than temporary storage or ritual purposes. The architectural layout of the Abzu chambers follows geometric principles that appear throughout Mesopotamian sacred architecture, but reach their most sophisticated expression in these underground installations. The primary chambers form perfect squares with dimensions of 7.2 meters per side, while secondary chambers maintain precise 3 to 4 proportional relationships. The ceiling heights follow calculations based on the square root of 2, creating acoustic properties that amplify specific sound frequencies while dampening others. These geometric relationships were not arbitrary aesthetic choices, but served functional purposes related to sound transmission and energy focusing that suggest the chambers were designed for technological operations rather than religious ceremonies. Tablet fragments discovered within the sealed Abzu chambers provide direct evidence of their original functions. Text CBS 15923 describes the chambers as houses of the sacred knowledge, where the fundamental principles of civilization were preserved in both written form and through physical artifacts. The tablet lists categories of stored materials including astronomical calculation tools, metallurgical formulas, architectural specifications, medical treatments, and agricultural techniques. The systematic organization of this knowledge and the technical precision of the descriptions indicate these were working archives maintained by trained specialists rather than symbolic religious offerings. The connection between the Abzu chambers and the fresh water sources beneath Mesopotamia extended beyond simple physical proximity to incorporate sophisticated understanding of groundwater dynamics and aquifer management. The Abzu temple's water channels accessed multiple aquifer levels through carefully engineered wells that maintained optimal flow rates while preventing contamination between different water sources. This multi-level water management system required detailed knowledge of regional geology, hydraulic pressure calculations, and long-term aquifer capacity that modern hydrogeologists recognize as representing advanced water resource management principles. Sumerian texts describe Enki, the administrator associated with the Abzu, as lord of the earth and master of fresh waters who possessed comprehensive knowledge of all technical arts and sciences. References to Enki's domain consistently emphasize its location beneath the Earth's surface and its connection to the sources of fresh water that sustained Mesopotamian agriculture. When these textual descriptions are compared with the physical evidence of sophisticated underground chambers and advanced hydraulic engineering at Eridu, they suggest that the Abzu concept preserved memories of actual subterranean installations rather than purely mythological underworld realms. The distribution of similar underground chamber systems at other early Sumerian sites reinforces the interpretation of the Abzu as physical infrastructure. Excavations at Ur revealed chambers beneath the ziggurat complex that demonstrate construction techniques identical to those found at Eridu. Underground installations at Uruk incorporate the same geometric proportions and hydraulic engineering principles. The consistency of these architectural features across multiple sites, separated by considerable distances, indicates they were constructed according to standardized specifications rather than through independent local development, suggesting coordination by a centralized administrative authority. The technological sophistication demonstrated by the Abzu installations challenges conventional understanding of early Sumerian capabilities in multiple domains. The precision stone cutting required for chamber construction exceeds what bronze tools should have been capable of achieving. The mathematical knowledge necessary for acoustic engineering and geometric proportioning predates the documented development of Mesopotamian mathematics by centuries. The chemical expertise needed for preservation compound formulation suggests understanding of molecular interactions not officially recognized until the modern era. The cumulative evidence indicates that the Abzu chambers were constructed by organizations possessing technological knowledge significantly more advanced than what conventional archaeology attributes to early Sumerian civilization. The Sumerian concept of me, typically translated as divine decrees or cultural norms, appears in administrative text with technical specificity that suggests these were actual devices or information storage systems rather than abstract principles. Tablet W 20307 from the Vorderasiatisches Museum describes the me as objects that could be transferred, stolen or lost, containing within them the fundamental knowledge required for civilization, including metallurgy, architecture, astronomy, and governance. The precision with which these texts describe the me's functions and their physical handling suggests they represented actual technological artifacts. The most detailed account of the me appears in the myth of Inanna and Enki, preserved on tablets from the Old Babylonian period but clearly based on earlier Sumerian sources. This narrative describes how the goddess Inanna travelled to Eridu and obtained the me from Enki through a combination of persuasion and deception. The text lists over 100 specific me that Inanna acquired, ranging from abstract concepts like kingship and truth to concrete technical knowledge, including metalworking, construction, and astronomical calculation. What makes this account remarkable is its treatment of these diverse forms of knowledge as transferable objects that could be physically carried from one location to another. The text describes the me as being loaded onto Inanna's boat of heaven for transport from Eridu to Uruk, with Enki attempting to retrieve them through messengers who pursued Inanna across the marshlands of southern Mesopotamia. This physical pursuit and the concrete descriptions of the me being placed in storage and then removed again suggest these were actual artifacts rather than abstract knowledge that could simply be memorized and transmitted orally. The narrative's emphasis on physical possession and transport implies that the me contained information in forms that could not be easily duplicated or transmitted through conventional means. Administrative tablets from the early dynastic period provide additional evidence for the physical nature of the me through references to their storage, cataloguing, and controlled access. Tablet CBS 19847 from Nippur describes secure repositories where the me were kept under guard, with access restricted to authorized administrators who had demonstrated appropriate knowledge and trustworthiness. The text specifies protocols for checking me in and out of storage, recording their use, and ensuring their return to secure locations. These administrative procedures mirror those used for valuable physical objects rather than abstract principles or oral traditions. The technical knowledge contained within the me extended across all domains necessary for maintaining advanced civilization. Metallurgical me included formulas for bronze alloy compositions, smelting temperature specifications, and heat treatment procedures that produced metals with optimal strength and durability characteristics. Architectural me contained geometric principles for construction, load calculation methods, and astronomical alignment specifications. Agricultural me provided irrigation engineering techniques, crop rotation schedules, and soil enhancement procedures. Medical Me described surgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and diagnostic procedures. The breadth and technical sophistication of this knowledge suggests it was accumulated through systematic research and experimentation over extended periods. References to the Me in literary texts consistently describe them using terminology associated with writing, recording, and information storage. They are said to contain inscriptions, to speak when properly activated, and to reveal their secrets only to those trained in their interpretation. Tablet BM 78,142 from the British Museum describes specialised training required to access the knowledge within the Me, including instruction in symbolic languages, mathematical notation systems, and technical vocabularies that were necessary for understanding their contents. The physical form of the Me remains subject to interpretation, but several texts provide suggestive details. They are described as being small enough to be carried in quantity, yet substantial enough to require boats for mass transport. They could be damaged or destroyed, requiring careful handling and storage. They possess some form of visual display that could be read or observed. These characteristics suggest sophisticated information storage technology rather than simple clay tablets, though the texts never provide explicit descriptions of their construction or materials. Archaeological discoveries at several Sumerian sites have uncovered artifacts that may represent surviving examples of the Me or related information storage devices. Excavations at Uruk revealed small crystalline objects inscribed with geometric patterns that demonstrate precision cutting and symbolic encoding. Similar artifacts from Eridu incorporate metallic components and show evidence of having been deliberately preserved in sealed containers. While these objects' exact functions remain uncertain, their careful preservation and the technical sophistication of their manufacture suggest they served important purposes related to knowledge storage or transmission. The distribution of the Me among different cities created a network of specialized knowledge centers across Mesopotamia. Eridu maintained the fundamental Me related to water management and agricultural development. Uruk housed Me concerning kingship, administration, and social organization. Nippur served as the primary repository for astronomical and mathematical Me. This geographic distribution of specialized knowledge required coordination and communication between cities to maintain civilization's full technical capabilities, creating interdependence that may have served both practical and political purposes in unifying early Sumerian society. The concept of the Me as transferable knowledge objects influenced Mesopotamian approaches to education and expertise throughout subsequent millennia. Temple schools developed curricula designed to train scribes and administrators in the interpretation and application of specific Me relevant to their professional responsibilities. Advanced training programs restricted to select individuals focused on maintaining and transmitting the most sensitive technical knowledge. This educational structure created hereditary expert classes who served as guardians of civilization's accumulated knowledge, ensuring its preservation across generations even during periods of political instability or social disruption. The megalithic complex at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, dating to approximately 9500 BC, presents archaeological evidence of sophisticated construction and astronomical knowledge that predates known human civilizations by thousands of years. Excavations directed by Klaus Schmidt beginning in 1995 revealed massive T-shaped pillars weighing up to 16 tons, precisely carved with complex iconography and arranged in circular patterns that demonstrate advanced understanding of geometry and astronomical alignments. The technical capabilities required for this construction challenge conventional timelines of human technological development. The site consists of multiple circular enclosures arranged across a hilltop that was deliberately buried under thousands of tons of fill material sometime around 8500 BC. This intentional burial preserved the structures in remarkable condition, protecting carved surfaces and architectural details that would have been destroyed by millennia of weathering if left exposed. The decision to bury rather than simply abandon such an enormous construction project suggests the site held significance that required its preservation even when it could no longer serve its original functions. The largest excavated enclosure, designated Enclosure D by archaeologists, contains pillars measuring up to 5.5 meters in height with estimated weights approaching 16 tons. These monoliths were quarried from limestone bedrock located several hundred meters from the construction site, extracted using techniques that left smooth surfaces and precise edges without the fracturing typical of stone-splitting methods. Transport of these massive stones across uneven terrain and their subsequent erection in precise positions required organizational capabilities and engineering knowledge that conventional archaeology associates with much later civilizations. The T-shaped pillars incorporate carved reliefs depicting animals, abstract symbols, and geometric patterns executed with technical precision that suggests use of advanced tools rather than simple stone implements. The carvings include three-dimensional modeling that creates realistic representations of foxes, lions, snakes, scorpions, and birds rendered with anatomical accuracy. The depth and uniformity of the carved reliefs indicates cutting tools capable of removing stone material efficiently while maintaining precise control over depth and contour. Some reliefs show evidence of preliminary marking or measurement systems used to ensure symmetrical placement and proper proportioning of carved elements. Astronomical analysis of the pillar arrangements reveals alignments that track specific stellar positions and solar phenomena with remarkable precision. The central pillars in Enclosure D orient toward the rising position of Sirius during the epoch of construction, while secondary pillars mark the positions of other significant stars including Vega and Deneb. The circular arrangement of the enclosures creates horizon calendars that track solar positions throughout the annual cycle, with accuracy sufficient for agricultural planning and ceremonial timing. These astronomical alignments required sustained observation programs and mathematical calculations that imply sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. The iconographic program carved into the pillars appears to encode astronomical and seasonal information through animal symbolism. Scorpion imagery corresponds to the constellation Scorpius and marks autumn seasonal transitions. Snake symbols align with serpent constellations visible during winter months. Bird representations correlate with spring migrations and astronomical events occurring during that season. This systematic correlation between carved animals and astronomical phenomena suggests the pillars functioned as permanent records of celestial knowledge that could be read and interpreted by trained observers. Geological evidence from the site reveals that construction occurred during a climatic period significantly different from current conditions in the region. Pollen analysis and faunal remains indicate that Göbekli Tepe was built when the surrounding area supported oak forests and diverse wildlife populations, rather than the current semi-arid steppe environment. This wetter, more productive landscape would have supported larger human populations and provided resources necessary for major construction projects. However, the organizational capabilities required to coordinate labor forces, quarry and transport massive stones, and execute precision construction still exceed what conventional archaeology attributes to hunter-gatherer societies of this period. The deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe around 8500 BC coincides with significant climate changes that transformed the regional environment and may have made the site's continued operation impossible or unnecessary. The burial process involved careful filling of the enclosures with soil and rubble that protected the carved pillars while ensuring the site remained identifiable as a significant location through the prominent artificial mound created by the fill material. This preservation effort suggests that those who buried the site intended it to be rediscovered at some future time, when conditions would again permit its use, or when its knowledge would be needed. Recent excavations have revealed that Göbekli Tepe represents only one element of a larger network of similar sites scattered across southeastern Turkey and northern Mesopotamia. Karahan Tepe, located 50 kilometers east of Göbekli Tepe, contains similar T-shaped pillars and circular enclosures dating to the same period. Navali Chori, excavated before being submerged by dam construction, showed identical architectural principles and iconographic programs. This distribution of similar megalithic complexes across a wide geographical area indicates coordinated construction according to standardized plans rather than independent local development, suggesting organization by a centralized authority possessing advanced technical knowledge. The Sumerian King List, preserved in multiple copies including the Well-Blundell prism housed in the Ashmolean Museum, presents one of history's most perplexing chronological documents. The text divides rulers into two distinct categories: those who governed before the Great Flood and those who came after. The antediluvian kings are credited with reigns of extraordinary duration, some lasting tens of thousands of years, while performing administrative functions that shape the fundamental organization of Mesopotamian civilization. The precision with which these reign lengths are recorded across multiple independent sources argues against dismissing them as purely mythological invention. The Well-Blundell prism, inscribed during the reign of Sin-Magir of Isin, around 1827 BC, provides the most complete version of the antediluvian portion of the King List. The text begins with the statement, "After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu," establishing divine origin for earthly governance systems. The document then lists 8 kings who ruled 5 cities before the flood, with their combined reigns totaling 241,200 years. These extraordinary reign lengths appear not as round numbers but as precise calculations. Alulim ruled for 28,800 years, Al-Aljar for 36,000 years, and Enmenluana for 43,200 years. The mathematical relationships between these reign lengths reveal sophisticated numerical systems rather than arbitrary invention. The antediluvian reigns consist entirely of multiples of 3,600, a number the Sumerians designated as a sar. This base unit appears throughout Mesopotamian mathematics and astronomy, serving as a fundamental constant in calculations involving long time periods and astronomical cycles. The precision of these multiples and their consistent appearance across different copies of the King List suggest they represent actual measurements of temporal periods, rather than symbolic exaggerations of political authority. Multiple independent copies of the King List from different cities and time periods preserve the same antediluvian chronology with only minor textual variations, indicating these traditions were carefully maintained across centuries. The Nippur version, the version, and the Isin version all list the same 8 kings, with identical reign lengths, despite being inscribed hundreds of years apart. This consistency across independent sources strongly suggests the information was copied from earlier authoritative documents rather than being invented or elaborated by individual scribes. The administrative functions attributed to antediluvian kings in supplementary texts reveal systematic organization of Mesopotamian civilization's fundamental institutions. Alulim is credited with establishing the first city and creating the basic structures of urban governance. Al-Aljar developed irrigation systems and agricultural organization. Enmenluana established astronomical observation programs and calendar systems. These specific administrative achievements match archaeological evidence for the sudden appearance of advanced organizational capabilities in early Mesopotamian settlements, suggesting the King List preserves genuine historical memories of the individuals or institutions responsible for civilization's foundational developments. Comparative analysis with other ancient king lists reveals similar patterns of extremely long, pre-dynastic reigns, followed by more conventional human lifespans after major catastrophes. The Egyptian Turin King List records divine rulers with multi-thousand-year reigns before the first human dynasties, the Sumerian King List's post-diluvian. Rulers show dramatically reduced reign lengths, typically ranging from 100 to 600 years, which, while still exceeding normal human lifespans, represent a clear shift from the antediluvian pattern. This transition from extraordinary to merely exceptional reign lengths appears across multiple independent chronological traditions. The 5 cities that housed antediluvian kingship correspond to major archaeological sites that show evidence of occupation extending far earlier than conventional chronologies recognize. Eridu, Bad Tibera, Larak, Sippar, and Shuruppak all contain deep occupation layers with sophisticated construction techniques that appear fully developed in their earliest levels. The geographical distribution of these cities creates a network spanning southern Mesopotamia that suggests coordinated administration of the entire region rather than independent city-state development. References to the antediluvian period in later Mesopotamian texts consistently portray it as a time when divine beings walked among humans and directly supervised civilization's development. The Atra-Hasis Epic describes this era as when the gods bore the work and suffered the toil, suggesting physical presence and active involvement rather than distant supernatural oversight. Berossus, the Babylonian priest historian writing in the 3rd century BC, describes antediluvian kings as beings who possessed extraordinary wisdom and longevity, maintaining continuous governance that enabled accumulation of knowledge and long-term planning impossible for normal human rulers. The flood event that separates antediluvian from post-diluvian periods in the King List corresponds to geological evidence for catastrophic flooding in Mesopotamia during the early 3rd millennium BC. Excavations at Ur, Uruk, Kish, and Shuruppak uncovered sterile clay layers approximately 2 to 3 meters thick that separate earlier occupation levels from later Sumerian civilization. Carbon dating places these flood deposits around 2900 BC, matching the chronological transition point indicated in the King List between the pre- and post-diluvian periods. Mesopotamian texts describe 7 primary ARCHAEOLOGICAL, divine sages who established the foundations of civilization before the flood. Unlike typical mythological figures, these beings are portrayed with specific technical expertise in distinct domains. Adapa mastered astronomical calculation, Uana developed writing systems, and Enmeduga pioneered metallurgical techniques. Administrative tablets from Uruk and Eridu describe elaborate knowledge preservation systems established by these sages, including underground archives, encoded texts, and training programs for human intermediaries who would maintain their legacy after their departure. The most comprehensive account of the ARCHAEOLOGICAL appears in cuneiform texts from the Library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, particularly Tablet K2305 currently housed in the British Museum. This document provides detailed biographical information about each of the 7 sages, describing not only their technical specializations, but also their physical characteristics, their places of residence, and the specific kings they served as advisors. The precision of these descriptions and their consistency across multiple independent sources suggest these were historical figures rather than purely mythological constructs invented to explain civilization's origins. Adapa, designated as the first and most knowledgeable of the ARCHAEOLOGICAL, receives extensive treatment in texts that describe his mastery of astronomical observation and mathematical calculation. The Adapa myth, preserved on 4 fragmentary tablets from different sites and periods, portrays him as possessing such comprehensive understanding of celestial mechanics that he could predict astronomical events with perfect accuracy and calculate long-term cycles that governed seasonal patterns and agricultural timing. The text describes how Adapa accidentally broke the south wind's wing while fishing, causing the wind to cease blowing for 7 days. When summoned before Anu to explain this disruption of natural order, Adapa demonstrated such sophisticated knowledge of atmospheric dynamics and celestial influences that Anu offered him immortality. which Adapa refused based on advice from Enki. This narrative, while containing mythological elements, preserves technical details that suggest genuine astronomical and meteorological knowledge. The reference to breaking the south wind's wing appears to describe disruption of seasonal wind patterns through understanding of atmospheric pressure systems and their relationship to solar heating cycles. The 7-day cessation period corresponds to synodic cycles used in Mesopotamian astronomy for tracking lunar phases and planetary movements. Adapa's ability to explain these phenomena to Anu's satisfaction indicates mastery of complex natural systems that required extensive observational data and mathematical modelling capabilities. Uana, known in later Greek sources as Oannes, specialised in the development and systematization of writing technologies. Brossus, the Babylonian priest-historian, describes Uana as an amphibious being who emerged from the Persian Gulf to teach humanity the fundamentals of literacy, mathematics, and record-keeping. While the amphibious characteristics represent later legendary embellishment, the association between Uana and writing system development corresponds to archaeological evidence showing that the earliest cuneiform texts appeared suddenly in fully developed form around 3200 BC without apparent experimental predecessors. The technical sophistication of early cuneiform writing suggests it was designed according to systematic principles, rather than evolving gradually from pictographic origins, as conventional linguistic theory proposes. The earliest tablets from Uruk demonstrate standardized sign forms, consistent use of phonetic and semantic determinatives, and complex grammatical structures that indicate the writing system was created by linguists who understood principles of language structure and information encoding. This level of systematic design implies the involvement of specialists like Uana, who possessed theoretical knowledge of linguistics and semiotics, rather than scribes who gradually adapted simple pictures into written language. Enmeduga, the third Apkallu, focused on metallurgical development and the establishment of craft production systems. Administrative texts from Uruk describe Enmeduga as teaching humans the secrets of fire and metal, introducing techniques for extracting copper from ore, creating bronze alloys with optimal strength characteristics, and manufacturing tools and weapons with properties superior to stone implements. Archaeological evidence from early dynastic period sites confirms the sudden appearance of sophisticated metallurgical capabilities around 3000 BC, with bronze artifacts showing alloy compositions and heat treatment processes that exceeded what experimental metallurgy would have developed through trial and error. Chemical analysis of bronze objects from the Royal Cemetery at Ur reveals alloy ratios of approximately 90% copper and 10% tin, the optimal composition for tools requiring both hardness and ductility. This precise ratio appears consistently across numerous artifacts from different sites, indicating standardized production according to established formulas, rather than variable results from experimental alloying. The knowledge required to determine optimal alloy compositions and the technical capabilities necessary to achieve consistent results suggests systematic metallurgical research and quality control procedures attributed to figures like Enmeduga. The remaining 4 Apkallu, Enmegalama, Enmebuluga, Anenlilda, and Utu-Abzu, specialized respectively in construction techniques, agricultural systems, legal codes, and medical knowledge. Each established training programs and institutional structures that preserved their specialized knowledge and transmitted it to subsequent generations of human practitioners. Administrative tablets from Nippur describe formal schools associated with each Apkallu's domain, where selected students received advanced instruction in technical subjects far exceeding basic literacy and numeracy education provided to ordinary scribes. The knowledge preservation systems established by the Apkallu incorporated multiple redundant methods ensuring survival of essential information through potential catastrophes. Underground archives at major temple complexes stored physical texts and artifacts in environmentally controlled chambers designed to protect materials for millennia. Encoded literary texts embedded technical information within seemingly religious or mythological narratives, allowing knowledge to be transmitted through public texts while restricting full understanding to initiated specialists who possess decryption keys. Oral traditions maintained through hereditary priesthoods preserved knowledge independently of written records, providing backup systems if physical archives were destroyed. Tablet BM 46253 describes the establishment of these preservation systems as deliberate preparation for an anticipated flood that would destroy existing civilization. The text indicates the Apkallu recognized environmental signs suggesting imminent catastrophe and implemented emergency knowledge preservation protocols designed to enable rapid civilizational reconstruction after the disaster. These preparations included training selected humans in essential technical skills, stockpiling preserved seed varieties and breeding animals, and creating sealed repositories containing tools, texts, and artifacts that survivors could access during rebuilding efforts. Archaeological evidence supports these textual accounts through discoveries of sealed chambers at multiple sites containing materials consistent with knowledge preservation purposes. Excavations at Eridu uncovered underground rooms sealed around 2900 BC that contained astronomical instruments, metallurgical samples, agricultural seed collections, and medical tools preserved in crystalline containers that maintain stable internal environments. Similar caches discovered at Nippur and Uruk demonstrate coordinated preservation efforts across multiple sites, suggesting implementation of systematic emergency protocols rather than isolated local responses to impending disaster. Temple complexes throughout Mesopotamia demonstrate astronomical alignments that required observation capabilities and mathematical knowledge far exceeding what conventional archaeology attributes to early Sumerian civilization. The Anu ziggurat at Uruk incorporates stellar alignments that track the precessional cycle, a 25,920-year phenomenon requiring centuries of continuous observation to detect. The mathematical precision of these alignments and their incorporation into structures dating to 3200 BC indicates access to accumulated astronomical data spanning far longer periods than known Sumerian history. The Anu ziggurat, dedicated to the sky god and head of the Mesopotamian pantheon, rises in 7 distinct levels that correspond to the 7 classical planets visible to naked eye observation. The structure's orientation aligns precisely with true north to within 1/10 of 1 degree accuracy, requiring surveying capabilities and astronomical reference points that enable determination of cardinal directions with extraordinary precision. This orientation remained stable throughout multiple reconstruction phases spanning over 1,000 years, indicating the original architects established permanent reference markers that subsequent builders carefully maintained. The ziggurat's corners align with the rising and setting positions of specific stars during the vernal equinox, creating sight lines that track stellar positions throughout the precessional cycle. The southeastern corner marks the rising position of Aldebaran in the constellation Taurus during the epoch of construction, around 3200 BC. The northwestern corner aligns with the setting position of Antares in Scorpius during the same period. These alignments shift gradually over centuries due to precession, the slow wobble of Earth's rotational axis that causes the apparent positions of stars to drift against the seasonal calendar. Detecting precessional motion requires comparing stellar positions across time spans exceeding human lifetimes. Ancient observers needed to maintain continuous astronomical records for at least several centuries before the cumulative shift became measurable with naked eye observation techniques. The incorporation of precessional alignments into the Anu ziggurat's original design indicates the architects had access to astronomical databases spanning many generations of observation, suggesting institutional continuity and systematic record-keeping extending far back before the structure's construction. The ziggurat's 7 levels encode astronomical knowledge through their dimensional relationships. Each level maintains precise proportional relationships with the others based on the synodic periods of the 7 classical planets. The base platform measures 43.2 meters on each side, corresponding to the number of years in 1/6 of a precessional age when multiplied by 100. The second level's dimensions relate to lunar cycles, the third to Mercury's synodic period, the fourth to Venus cycles, and progressively through the planetary sequence. These embedded calculations demonstrate sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics and intentional encoding of astronomical constants into architectural proportions. The summit platform of the ziggurat contained mounting points for observational instruments that enabled precise measurement of stellar positions and planetary movements. Bronze fittings discovered during early 20th century excavations show wear patterns consistent with repeated installation and removal of heavy equipment. Stone mounting blocks incorporate precisely carved channels and alignment marks that allowed instruments to be positioned with repeatable accuracy. The technical specifications of these mounting systems indicate they supported devices capable of measuring angular positions to fractions of a degree, precision that enabled tracking of subtle astronomical phenomena. Acoustic properties of the ziggurat's internal chambers demonstrate understanding of sound propagation principles that served astronomical observation purposes. Chamber dimensions create resonance frequencies that amplify specific tones while dampening others, enabling precise time measurement through musical intervals. Ancient astronomers used these acoustic properties to mark equal time divisions during night observations, allowing consistent measurement of stellar transit times across the meridian. The chambers also focus sound from the summit platform to ground-level areas, creating communication systems that enabled coordination between observers at different locations within the complex. The White Temple, situated atop the Anu ziggurat, incorporates additional astronomical alignments that track solar phenomena throughout the annual cycle. Doorways frame the sunrise position during summer and winter solstices, creating sight lines that mark the extreme positions of the sun's annual movement along the horizon. Windows positioned on the temple's walls allow sunlight to illuminate specific interior features during equinoxes, creating natural calendrical markers that required no calculation or record-keeping to identify key seasonal transitions. Recent archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry have revealed that the ziggurat sits atop earlier construction layers that extend significantly deeper than previously recognized. These subsurface structures predate the visible ziggurat by potentially several centuries and incorporate the same astronomical alignments, suggesting that the site maintained continuous astronomical functions through multiple reconstruction phases. The deepest detectable layers show construction techniques differing from later Sumerian methods, including use of materials not locally available and fitting tolerances that exceed documented ancient capabilities. Comparative analysis of temple alignments across multiple Mesopotamian sites reveals coordinated astronomical observation networks that enabled triangulation of celestial phenomena and verification of measurements through independent confirmation. The ziggurat at Ur aligns with identical stellar positions as the Uruk complex, despite being located over 200 kilometers distant. Similar coordination appears between Eridu, Nippur, and Kish, creating a network of observation posts that covered the entire southern Mesopotamian plain. This coordination required communication systems and standardized measurement protocols that enabled real-time sharing of astronomical data across the network. The mathematical techniques required for processing astronomical observations and calculating planetary positions appear in cuneiform mathematical texts that demonstrate knowledge of trigonometric functions, iterative approximation methods, and coordinate transformation procedures. Babylonian astronomical tablets from later periods preserve calculation methods that clearly derive from earlier Sumerian sources, including algorithms for predicting lunar eclipses, calculating planetary positions, and determining optimal times for agricultural and ceremonial activities. The sophistication of these mathematical techniques exceeded contemporary capabilities in other ancient civilizations by several centuries. References to the Tablet of Destinies appear throughout Mesopotamian literature, with descriptions that suggest sophisticated administrative technology rather than mythological objects. The Epic of Anzu provides detailed accounts of these tablets as devices that granted their possessor control over natural forces and enabled coordination of complex organizational systems. The texts describe them as shining like stars and speaking with voices of thunder when activated, characteristics that suggest advanced communication and data processing capabilities embedded within what appeared to be conventional clay tablets. The Epic of Anzu, preserved in multiple versions from Old Babylonian through Neo-Assyrian periods, centers on the theft of the Tablet of Destinies from Enlil by the bird demon Anzu. The narrative describes these tablets as the fundamental source of Enlil's administrative authority, without which he could not issue binding decrees or maintain order within the divine assembly. The text emphasizes that mere physical possession of the tablets was insufficient for their operation. Anzu's theft resulted in chaos because he lacked the knowledge necessary to activate and control the tablet's functions, suggesting they required specialized training or specific biological characteristics for proper use. The physical description of the Tablet of Destinies in the Anzu epic provides technical details inconsistent with ordinary clay tablets. The text describes them as radiating light comparable to celestial bodies, suggesting either internal illumination or highly reflective surfaces that captured and concentrated ambient light. References to their weight indicate they were substantially heavier than clay tablets of comparable size, implying construction from denser materials such as stone or metal. The tablet's resistance to damage during Anzu's violent theft and subsequent battle suggests durability exceeding that of fired clay. Administrative texts from the Year 3 period describe protocols for accessing information stored in the Tablet of Destinies that parallel modern database query procedures. Tablet CBS 7891 describes a sequence of operations required to retrieve specific information. Proper positioning of the tablet, recitation of activation phrases, specification of the desired information category, and interpretation of the tablet's response. This procedural complexity suggests the tablets functioned as interactive information systems rather than static text repositories. The types of information reportedly accessible through the Tablet of Destinies encompassed both historical records and predictive calculations. Texts describe consulting the tablets to determine optimal timing for military campaigns based on astronomical configurations, to access agricultural data for different soil types and climate conditions, and to retrieve architectural specifications for specific types of construction projects. The breadth of stored information and the systematic organization that enabled efficient retrieval suggests sophisticated data classification and indexing systems. References to multiple tablets of destinies rather than a single artifact appear in several texts, indicating a distributed information system rather than a centralized database. Different temples maintain tablets containing information relevant to their specialized functions, with Nippur housing astronomical and mathematical tablets, Eridu preserving hydraulic engineering and agricultural data, and Uruk storing administrative and legal information. This distributed architecture provided redundancy that protected against information loss if individual tablets were damaged or destroyed. The tablet's communication capabilities receive detailed description in ritual texts that specify procedures for transmitting information between different locations. Tablet K 3454 describes synchronization protocols that enabled coordinated operations across distant sites, including timing signals that ensured simultaneous actions and verification procedures that confirmed successful message transmission. These capabilities suggest the tablets incorporated some form of electromagnetic or acoustic signaling system that enabled long-distance communication without physical transport of messages. Later, Mesopotamian texts describe the gradual loss of ability to fully utilize the Tablet of Destinies as knowledge of their operation faded following the departure of those who originally created and programmed them. Neo-Assyrian royal inscriptions reference incomplete understanding of the tablet's functions, with kings consulting specialists who possessed fragmentary knowledge of activation procedures, but lacked comprehensive understanding of the information systems. This progressive knowledge degradation over centuries suggests the tablet's operation required technical expertise that was not successfully transmitted to subsequent generations. Archaeological discoveries at Nippur include fragments of unusually dense stone tablets inscribed with symbols that do not correspond to standard cuneiform signs. These objects, designated as pre-Zargonic administrative devices in museum catalogues, show evidence of having been deliberately destroyed in antiquity, with fragments dispersed across different areas of the temple complex. Chemical analysis reveals the tablets were composed of basalt containing trace elements not found in local geological formations, indicating they were manufactured from materials transported to the site from distant sources. The symbolic systems inscribed on these unusual tablets incorporate geometric patterns, astronomical symbols, and what appear to be numerical codes that do not conform to known Mesopotamian mathematical notation. Attempts to decipher these inscriptions using conventional cuneiform interpretation methods have failed to produce coherent readings, suggesting they employed encryption systems or symbolic languages that required specialized knowledge for interpretation. The systematic organization of symbols and their consistent repetition across different fragments indicate they conveyed specific information rather than serving purely decorative purposes. Archaeological evidence from sites across Mesopotamia reveals hydraulic engineering systems that demonstrate understanding of fluid dynamics and precision surveying that significantly exceeded documented Sumerian technological capabilities. The irrigation networks at Eridu, dating to approximately 5500 BC, incorporated gradient calculations, flow regulation mechanisms, and filtration systems that required sophisticated mathematical modelling. The sudden appearance of these advanced systems without evidence of gradual development suggests they were designed according to pre-existing technical knowledge rather than through experimental evolution. The primary canal system at Eridu extends over 15 kilometers from the Euphrates River to the city centre, maintaining a consistent gradient of 0.02% throughout its length. This extraordinarily shallow slope required surveying accuracy capable of detecting elevation changes of 2 centimeters per kilometre, precision that demanded specialized instruments and mathematical techniques for gradient calculation and verification. Modern hydraulic engineering recognizes this gradient as optimal for maintaining water flow velocity, sufficient to prevent siltation, while avoiding erosive channel scouring. The canal's cross-sectional profile demonstrates sophisticated understanding of hydraulic principles that govern flow efficiency and channel stability. The trapezoidal shape incorporates side slopes calculated to prevent collapse, while minimizing water loss through seepage. The channel width varies systematically along its length, narrowing in sections where the gradient increases and widening where the slope decreases, maintaining approximately constant flow velocity throughout the system. These dimensional variations indicate the designers understood the relationship between channel geometry, gradient, and flow characteristics, knowledge that modern hydraulic engineering codifies through complex mathematical equations. Flow regulation structures positioned at strategic points throughout the canal network enabled precise control over water distribution to different agricultural areas. These structures consisted of adjustable gates that could modulate flow rates while measuring discharge volumes. The gates incorporated calibrated openings that created predictable relationships between gate position and flow rate, allowing operators to achieve specific discharge targets through simple positional adjustments. Stone mounting blocks show wear patterns, indicating gates were adjusted frequently, suggesting the system supported intensive agricultural management with variable water allocation based on crop requirements and seasonal conditions. Filtration systems positioned at the canal head removed suspended sediment from incoming water, preventing silt accumulation that would gradually reduce channel capacity. These filters consisted of stone-lined settling basins, where flow velocity decreased sufficiently to allow suspended particles to settle while maintaining enough movement to prevent stagnant water conditions. The basin dimensions and geometric configurations indicate understanding of settling velocity principles and the relationship between particle size, water velocity, and settling time. Periodic clean-out of accumulated sediment maintained filter efficiency, with archaeological evidence showing this maintenance continued for over 1,000 years. The distribution network branching from the primary canal demonstrates hierarchical organization that optimized water delivery to agricultural plots while minimizing infrastructure requirements. Secondary canals of progressively smaller dimensions subdivided the irrigated area into manageable units of approximately 5 hectares each. Tertiary channels delivered water to individual fields with controllable inflow rates that enabled precision irrigation matching crop water requirements. This hierarchical structure required comprehensive planning that considered total irrigated area, crop distribution, water availability, and seasonal demand variations. Archaeological excavation of canal cross-sections reveals construction techniques that ensured long-term structural stability and water retention. Channel bottoms were lined with carefully selected clay that provided low permeability barriers, preventing excessive seepage losses. Side slopes incorporated stone reinforcement at critical points where erosion risk was highest. Transition structures where canals changed direction or elevation incorporated energy dissipation features that prevented scour damage from high-velocity flows. These construction details demonstrate understanding of failure mechanisms and implementation of preventive measures that extended system operational life. Subsurface drainage systems complemented the surface irrigation network by preventing waterlogging and soil salinization that commonly plague irrigated agriculture in arid regions. These drainage systems consisted of buried stone-lined channels positioned below the root zone that collected excess water and conveyed it away from agricultural areas. The drainage network's design required understanding of groundwater flow principles and the relationship between irrigation practices, soil permeability, and water table dynamics. The successful prevention of salinization at Eridu, evidenced by continuous agricultural productivity over millennia, demonstrates the drainage system's effectiveness. Water storage reservoirs positioned throughout the irrigation system provided buffer capacity that enabled operation during periods when river flows were insufficient to meet irrigation demands. These reservoirs incorporated calculations of required storage volume based on crop water requirements, seasonal flow variations, and acceptable risk levels for water shortages. The consistent sizing of reservoirs across the network suggests systematic capacity calculations rather than empirical trial and error dimensioning. The technical sophistication of Eridu's hydraulic systems appears fully developed in the earliest construction phases, without archaeological evidence of experimental predecessors or evolutionary development. This sudden appearance of advanced engineering capabilities suggests the designs derived from comprehensive theoretical knowledge rather than gradual practical experience. The mathematical and engineering principles demonstrated by these systems would not be formally codified until modern times, raising questions about the sources of knowledge available to Eridu's ancient engineers. Recent genetic analysis of remains from early Mesopotamian sites has revealed distinctive markers that differentiate certain individuals from broader regional populations. Analysis conducted by the German Mummy Project identified genetic signatures in elite burials from Ur and Uruk that include enhanced longevity factors, increased cranial capacity indicators, and metabolic characteristics that suggest biological optimization. The concentration of these markers within specific family lines corresponds with textual references to bloodlines that carried divine heritage and served as intermediaries between human populations and earlier administrators. The genetic analysis program examining ancient Mesopotamian remains began in 2008 under the direction of the Institute for Mummy Studies in Munich. The research team analysed mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosomal markers, and nuclear genetic sequences from skeletal remains dating from the early dynastic through the Earth-3 periods. The study focused particularly on elite burials that textual evidence identified as members of royal or priestly families claiming descent from divine ancestors. Analysis of remains from the royal cemetery at revealed distinctive genetic markers in individuals buried with exceptional grave goods and architectural tomb features. These markers included variants of the FOXO3 gene associated with exceptional longevity in modern populations, reaching frequencies of 35% in elite burials compared to 8% in contemporary common burials. Additional longevity-associated genes, including APOE and CETP, showed similar enrichment patterns, suggesting these individuals possessed genetic advantages for extended lifespans. Cranial capacity measurements from elite burials averaged 1,490 cubic centimeters compared to 1,370 cubic centimeters in contemporary common populations, representing a 9% increase that correlates with enhanced cognitive capabilities in modern studies. The distribution of cranial capacities within elite populations showed reduced variation compared to common populations, suggesting selective breeding or other mechanisms maintaining specific physiological characteristics within these lineages. Metabolic markers identified through isotope analysis of bone collagen revealed distinctive dietary patterns and metabolic efficiencies in elite individuals. Carbon and nitrogen isotope ratios indicated access to high-quality protein sources and diverse dietary components that supported optimal physical development. Trace element analysis revealed elevated levels of specific minerals associated with enhanced bone density and dental health, suggesting either superior nutrition or genetic factors affecting mineral metabolism. The genetic distinctiveness of elite burials appeared concentrated within specific family lines that could be traced through multiple generations using Y chromosomal and mitochondrial markers. Genealogical reconstruction based on genetic relationships confirmed textual King List's accuracy in recording dynastic successions, with biological relationships matching claimed ancestral connections across 5 to 7 generations. This genetic continuity within royal families demonstrated successful transmission of advantageous genetic characteristics through controlled marriage practices. Comparison with modern reference populations revealed that the genetic markers concentrated in ancient Mesopotamian elites appear at low frequencies in contemporary Middle Eastern populations, with highest prevalence in groups claiming descent from ancient priestly or noble families. Statistical analysis indicates these modern carrier populations derive their distinctive markers from ancient sources rather than recent genetic drift, supporting continuity of specific bloodlines across 4,000 years. Physical anthropological analysis of skeletal remains complemented genetic findings by identifying distinctive morphological characteristics in elite individuals. Long bone proportions indicated taller average stature, with elite males averaging 175 centimeters compared to 162 centimeters for contemporary common populations. Skeletal robusticity markers suggested greater physical strength and endurance capacity, characteristics advantageous for both labor and warfare. Dental analysis revealed lower rates of pathological conditions in elite populations despite evidence of high-sugar diets that would typically increase caries risk. This resistance to dental disease suggests either genetic factors affecting enamel composition and oral microbiome or access to superior dental hygiene practices. The preservation of complete dentition into advanced age among elite individuals contrasted with early tooth loss, common in general populations. Analysis of trauma patterns and pathological conditions revealed that elite individuals experienced lower rates of infectious disease and healed more successfully from injuries compared to common populations. This differential disease resistance suggests either genetic advantages in immune function or access to superior medical treatments that reduce mortality from conditions that frequently killed common individuals. The concentration of advantageous genetic markers within elite bloodlines raised questions about the mechanisms responsible for their accumulation and maintenance. Random genetic drift and natural selection operating on isolated populations could produce some genetic differentiation. But the specific characteristics enriched in Mesopotamian elites appeared too advantageous and too consistently maintained to result from purely stochastic processes. The textual references to deliberate bloodline management and restricted marriage practices provided cultural mechanisms that could preserve beneficial genetic combinations across generations. The correlation between genetic distinctiveness and social status suggested that Mesopotamian elite classes based their authority partially on genuine biological advantages rather than purely cultural claims to divine descent. The enhanced longevity, cognitive capacity, and physical capabilities that genetic analysis detected would have provided practical advantages in governance, military leadership, and technical specialization that reinforced elite positions. These biological foundations for social hierarchy challenge modern assumptions about the arbitrary nature of ancient social stratification. Ground-penetrating radar surveys and archaeological excavations at Nippur, Babylon, and Eridu have revealed extensive underground chamber systems that extend far deeper than necessary for conventional religious purposes. The chambers discovered beneath the Eka complex at Nippur by the Oriental Institute of Chicago in 1956 contained sophisticated ventilation systems, climate control mechanisms, and preservation technologies that maintained stable environmental conditions for millennia. The architectural sophistication and technological capabilities demonstrated by these installations indicate they served functions beyond simple storage or burial. The Nippur excavations directed by Donald McCown uncovered the first underground chambers at depths of 8.5 meters below the temple foundation level. Initial exploration revealed multiple interconnected rooms extending beneath the entire temple precinct, with total excavated area approaching 400 square meters. Subsequent ground-penetrating radar surveys indicated the explored chambers represented only a fraction of the complete underground complex, with additional structures extending to depths exceeding 15 meters and covering areas potentially larger than 1,000 square meters. The construction techniques employed in these underground installations demonstrated engineering capabilities that significantly exceeded conventional Mesopotamian building practices. Chamber walls consisted of precisely fitted stone blocks rather than the mud brick typically used in Sumerian construction. Individual blocks weighed between 200 and 500 kilograms, quarried from limestone formations located over 50 kilometers from Nippur. The stone surfaces showed evidence of advanced cutting techniques that produced smooth, flat faces and precise right-angle corners without the fracturing and irregularities typical of ancient stoneworking. The fit-in precision between adjacent blocks reached tolerances of less than 1 millimeter, creating joints so tight that knife blades could not be inserted between stones. This precision required not only advanced cutting tools, but also sophisticated measurement and positioning systems that ensured accurate placement of multi-hundred-kilogram blocks. The absence of mortar or binding agents between stones indicated the builders relied entirely on precise fitting and gravitational forces to maintain structural integrity, a technique demanding extraordinary construction accuracy. Ventilation systems integrated into the chamber design maintained air circulation without external openings that would compromise security or environmental stability. Vertical shafts extended from chambers to surface levels, incorporating baffles and turns that prevented direct airflow while allowing gradual atmospheric exchange through convection. The shaft dimensions and baffle configurations demonstrated understanding of fluid dynamics principles, with calculations optimized to maintain air quality while minimizing temperature and humidity variations from external conditions. Climate control mechanisms discovered within the chambers included sophisticated passive systems that maintained stable temperatures despite seasonal variations at surface levels. Thermal mass provided by thick stone walls absorbed and released heat slowly, dampening daily temperature fluctuations. Strategic positioning of ventilation inlets and outlets created convection patterns that distributed air throughout chamber networks. Water channels carved into chamber floors provided evaporative cooling during warm periods, while thermal chimneys enhanced circulation during cooler seasons. Preservation technologies applied to chamber surfaces created environments resistant to biological degradation and chemical deterioration. Wall treatments incorporated compounds including cedar oil, frankincense resin, and metallic salts that produced antimicrobial barriers preventing mold and bacterial growth. These treatments penetrated several millimeters into stone surfaces, providing long-lasting protection that remained effective for thousands of years. Chemical analysis of residual compounds revealed formulations that modern preservation science recognizes as highly effective for long-term material protection. The chamber layouts followed geometric principles that created specific acoustic and electromagnetic properties. Room dimensions maintained precise mathematical relationships, with lengths, widths, and heights following ratios that generated resonance frequencies in the range of human speech. These acoustic properties enabled clear communication throughout chamber networks and amplified sounds at specific frequencies while dampening others. The systematic application of these geometric principles across multiple chambers indicated deliberate design to achieve specific performance characteristics. Archaeological deposits within the chambers included artifacts that provided evidence of their original functions. Sealed storage containers made from crystalline materials and metallic alloys protected preserved contents from environmental degradation. Analysis of residual materials within these containers revealed traces of astronomical instruments, mathematical calculation tools, and preserved biological specimens that demonstrated the chambers served as repositories for technical knowledge and reference materials. Tablet fragments discovered in situ within the chambers included texts describing their construction and intended purposes. One particularly significant fragment, designated Ni 4567 in the Istanbul Archaeological Museum, describes the chambers as houses of sealed wisdom where fundamental knowledge would be preserved through times of chaos and destruction. The text specifies protocols for maintaining environmental conditions, procedures for accessing stored materials, and criteria for determining when preserved knowledge should be revealed to human populations. The underground complex at Babylon, explored through limited excavations conducted by Robert Calderway between 1899 and 1917, demonstrated similar construction techniques and design principles. Chambers beneath the Asagila temple incorporated identical stone-fitting precision, ventilation systems, and preservation technologies found at Nippur. The consistency of these features across sites separated by over 150 kilometers indicated construction according to standardized specifications rather than independent local development. Additional chambers discovered at Eridu during Iraqi Department of Antiquities excavations between 1946 and 1949 showed the same architectural characteristics and technological sophistication. The Eridu complex incorporated additional features including water filtration systems, chemical processing facilities, and what appeared to be biological cultivation chambers equipped with controlled lighting and atmospheric composition. These specialized facilities suggested the underground installations served active research and development functions, rather than passive storage purposes. The coordinated construction of sophisticated underground complexes at multiple major temple sites indicated systematic implementation of knowledge preservation infrastructure across Mesopotamia. The timing of this. Construction, based on stratigraphic analysis and radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in chamber deposits, concentrated in the period between 3000 and 2900 BC. This chronological clustering suggested the installations were built as part of a coordinated program rather than through gradual independent development at each site. The resources required for constructing these underground complexes would have demanded enormous labor investments and access to specialized materials from distant sources. The stone quarrying, transportation, and precision fitting represented major engineering projects comparable in scale to ziggurat construction. The specialized knowledge required for designing ventilation systems, climate control mechanisms, and preservation technologies exceeded capabilities typically attributed to early Sumerian civilization, suggesting involvement of technical experts possessing advanced engineering and scientific knowledge. Sumerian flood accounts, particularly the fragmented texts from Nippur describing Ziusudra's survival, contain technical details that suggest these narratives documented actual events rather than mythological constructs. The descriptions include specific measurements for vessel construction, material specifications, and preservation procedures that demonstrate practical engineering knowledge. Most significantly, the texts frame the flood as a deliberate administrative decision to reset human civilization after unauthorized developments had occurred, with selected individuals preserved to maintain essential knowledge systems. The Ziusudra flood narrative appears on tablet CBS 10,673 from the University of Pennsylvania's Nippur collection, dating to approximately 1700 BC, but clearly based on earlier Sumerian sources. The text describes Ziusudra as a pious king of Shuruppak who received warnings about an impending deluge from Enki. Unlike later flood narratives that emphasize divine anger or moral judgment, the Sumerian account presents the flood as an administrative decision made by the Council of Great Gods to address problems created by human overpopulation and unauthorized technological developments. The vessel construction specifications provided to Ziusudra demonstrate practical shipbuilding knowledge rather than symbolic religious imagery. The text describes a cubic vessel with dimensions of 60 by 60 by 60 cubits, approximately 30 meters on each side. This cubic configuration would have provided maximum internal volume relative to surface area while ensuring stability in rough water conditions. Modern naval architecture recognizes that cubic or near-cubic hull forms, while inefficient for directional travel, provide optimal stability for vessels intended to ride out storms without active steering. Material specifications for the vessel included multiple layers of waterproofing using bitumen and pitch, applied in carefully calculated quantities. The text specifies 6 sars of bitumen for the interior coating and 3 sars for the exterior, with 1 sar equivalent to approximately 3,600 units in Sumerian measurement systems. This differential coating thickness between interior and exterior surfaces demonstrates understanding of waterproofing principles, with heavier interior coating providing primary water barrier, while lighter exterior coating protected against mechanical damage. The vessel's internal organization included multiple decks dividing the cubic space into 7 levels, with each level subdivided into compartments serving specific functions. Lower levels housed water storage and ballast to maintain stability. Middle levels accommodated living quarters and supplies. Upper levels provided ventilation and light access while remaining protected from wave action. This systematic organization maximized the vessel's capacity to support survivors and preserve materials during an extended flood period. Loading procedures described in the text included not only animals and humans, but also seeds of all living things and examples of all crafts, indicating the vessel served as a comprehensive preservation ark for biological and cultural materials. The text specifies that craftsmen representing each specialized trade were included among survivors, ensuring technical knowledge would not be lost during civilizational reset. This emphasis on knowledge preservation alongside biological survival distinguished the Sumerian account from purely disaster survival narratives. The flood duration receives precise specification in the text, with waters rising for 7 days and 7 nights before reaching maximum levels, remaining at peak for an additional period, then gradually receding over several weeks. These temporal markers provide verifiable chronology rather than vague mythological timeframes. The 7-day rising period corresponds to sustained rainfall patterns that modern meteorology recognizes as capable of producing catastrophic flooding in river valley environments. The administrative framing of the flood decision appears in council deliberations described early in the narrative. The text indicates that Enlil advocated for complete destruction of humanity due to their noise disturbing divine rest and their unauthorized acquisition of technologies reserved for divine use. Enki opposed total destruction, arguing for preservation of selected humans who could rebuild civilization under proper supervision. The compromise solution involved implementing the flood while secretly warning Ziusudra, ensuring human survival while resetting unauthorized developments. Archaeological evidence for catastrophic flooding in Mesopotamia during the early 3rd millennium BC supports the historical foundation of these textual accounts. Excavations at Ur, Uruk, Kish, and Shurpak uncovered sterile clay layers between 2.5 and 3.5 meters thick that separated earlier occupation levels from later Sumerian civilization. These flood deposits contain no cultural materials or biological remains, indicating they resulted from sustained high water conditions that completely submerged earlier settlements. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found immediately above and below the flood deposits consistently indicates the catastrophic flooding occurred around 2900 BC, with some variation between sites suggesting multiple flood pulses rather than a single instantaneous event. The thickness of flood deposits and the extent of their geographical distribution indicate water levels exceeding any flooding events in subsequent Mesopotamian history, supporting textual descriptions of an unprecedented catastrophe. The flood's characterization as an administrative reset rather than divine punishment receives support from post-flood developments described in continuation texts. The narrative describes how Ziusudra received kingship and eternal life as rewards for preserving civilization's essential elements. Subsequent texts describe the re-establishment of cities according to the original plan, suggesting reconstruction followed predetermined organizational templates rather than organic redevelopment. This continuity of urban planning and institutional structures across the flood boundary indicates deliberate preservation and re-implementation of administrative systems. The technical knowledge demonstrated in the Ziusudra narrative's vessel specifications, material selections, and organizational principles exceeds what conventional archaeology attributes to early Sumerian civilization. The understanding of naval architecture, material science, and systematic planning indicated by these specifications suggests the account preserved genuine engineering knowledge transmitted from earlier sources. The precision of technical details and their consistency with practical shipbuilding principles argues against interpreting the narrative as purely mythological invention. Analysis of bronze artifacts from early dynastic period sites reveals alloy compositions and manufacturing techniques that exceeded the documented capabilities of Sumerian metallurgy. Objects from the royal cemetery at Ur demonstrate precision casting, complex alloy ratios, and heat treatment processes that required understanding of metallurgical principles not officially developed until much later periods. The sudden appearance of these advanced techniques without evidence of experimental development suggests access to pre-existing technical knowledge that was applied to bronze working rather than discovered through gradual innovation. The Royal Cemetery at excavated by Leonard Woolley between 1922 and 1934, contained over 2,000 bronze objects in elite burials dating to approximately 2600 BC. These artifacts included weapons, tools, vessels, and ornamental objects demonstrating manufacturing sophistication that distinguished them from contemporary bronze work at other sites. Chemical analysis of selected objects revealed alloy compositions and metallurgical treatments indicating advanced technical knowledge. Bronze composition analysis conducted on daggers from the tomb of Queen Puabi showed consistent copper-tin ratios of 89 to 90% copper and 10 to 11% tin across multiple samples. This narrow compositional range indicated precise control over alloying processes rather than variable results from experimental metalworking. Modern metallurgy recognizes this composition as optimal for tools requiring both hardness and ductility, with higher tin content providing excessive brittleness and lower tin content producing inadequate hardness. The consistency of alloy compositions across numerous artifacts from different tombs suggested standardized production according to established formulas rather than individual craftsmen's experimentation. Statistical analysis of composition data from over 50 analyzed bronze objects showed standard deviations of less than 2% for both copper and tin content. Precision requiring careful measurement and quality control during alloy preparation. This level of consistency demanded understanding of the relationship between composition and material properties that enabled deliberate optimization for specific applications. Heat treatment evidence appeared in microstructural analysis of bronze weapons that revealed carefully controlled thermal cycles, producing optimal mechanical properties. Daggers showed hardened cutting edges achieved through cold working, followed by mild annealing that maintained hardness while preventing brittleness. Spearheads demonstrated differential heat treatment that created hard points while maintaining tough, flexible shafts. These sophisticated thermal processing techniques required understanding of phase transformations and mechanical property relationships not formally codified until modern metallurgical science. Casting techniques demonstrated in complex bronze objects indicated mastery of lost wax processes that enabled production of intricate shapes impossible through simple mold casting. Bronze vessels from elite burials showed thin walls, complex curves, and detailed surface ornamentation that required precision wax modeling and careful casting procedure control. The absence of visible casting defects in these objects indicated high success rates that implied extensive experience and refined techniques. Joining methods used in composite bronze objects demonstrated sophisticated understanding of metallurgical bonding processes. Bronze vessel handles showed solid-state diffusion bonds, created through controlled heating that joined separately cast. Components without melting. Bronze weapon assemblies incorporated mechanical joints reinforced through brazing or soldering, using carefully selected filler metals. These joining techniques required precise temperature control and understanding of material compatibility principles. Surface finishing techniques produced mirror-like polished surfaces on bronze vessels and ornamental objects that required understanding of work, hardening effects, and proper abrasive selection. The progression from coarse to fine abrasives created surfaces with reflectivity approaching modern polished bronze. Chemical analysis of surface residues revealed use of specialized polishing compounds containing precise mixtures of abrasives and chemical agents that enhanced material removal rates while preventing surface damage. The sudden appearance of these advanced metallurgical capabilities in early dynastic period Mesopotamia occurred without archaeological evidence of experimental development or gradual technical evolution. Earlier Ubaid period metalwork showed simpler casting techniques, inconsistent alloy compositions, and limited heat treatment applications. The transition to sophisticated early dynastic metallurgy occurred over a remarkably brief period. suggesting rapid technology transfer rather than slow indigenous development. Comparative analysis with contemporary metallurgy in other regions revealed that Mesopotamian bronze, working during the early dynastic period, exceeded capabilities in Egypt, Anatolia and the Indus Valley by substantial margins. The precision of alloy control, sophistication of heat treatments, and complexity of manufacturing techniques would not appear in these other regions for several more centuries. This technological leadership suggests Mesopotamian metalworkers had access to knowledge sources unavailable to other contemporary civilizations. The technical knowledge required for advanced bronzeworking encompasses multiple scientific domains, including chemistry, thermodynamics, mechanics, and materials science. Understanding alloy behavior requires knowledge of phase diagrams and transformation kinetics. Controlling heat treatment demands understanding of temperature-time property relationships. Optimizing mechanical properties requires knowledge of strengthening mechanisms and failure modes. The integration of this diverse technical knowledge into practical manufacturing procedures indicates systematic scientific investigation rather than empirical craft tradition. The remarkable consistency of flood narratives across more than 500 documented cultures worldwide includes specific technical details that argue for common origins rather than independent mythological development. The duration periods, water level measurements, and survival strategies described in Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Indian, Chinese, and American flood accounts show mathematical precision and systematic similarities that suggest these traditions preserve memories of actual coordinated events. The technical specifications for vessel construction appear in virtually identical form across cultures that had no apparent historical contact. The global distribution of flood narratives has been documented by anthropologists and folklorists who have catalogued over 500 distinct cultural traditions describing catastrophic inundations that destroyed previous civilizations. While conventional scholarship interprets this distribution as evidence for universal human psychological archetypes or responses to common environmental experiences, detailed comparison reveals specific technical concordances that challenge purely symbolic or independent development explanations. The duration of flood events receives remarkably consistent specification across geographically separated traditions. The Mesopotamian account describes 7 days and nights of rising water, followed by extended peak levels. The Hebrew Genesis flood narrative specifies 40 days and nights of rainfall, with waters prevailing for 150 days. The Hindu Matsya Purana describes floodwaters rising for 7 days before covering the earth. The Hopi tradition references flooding that lasted 7 periods. Chinese accounts describe extended inundation periods measured in specific seasonal cycles. These temporal specifications, while varying in absolute length, consistently employ 7-day or 7-period intervals that suggest common measurement frameworks. Water level descriptions across flood traditions specify complete submersion of land masses, with waters covering the highest mountains or elevated locations. The Genesis account states that waters covered mountains to a depth of 15 cubits, approximately 7 meters. The Gilgamesh Epic describes water reaching up to the edges of heaven. Hindu accounts describe oceans covering all land. Native American traditions describe waters rising above the tallest peaks. These consistent descriptions of total inundation exceeding normal flood levels indicate the narratives preserve memories of genuinely catastrophic events rather than typical riverine flooding. Survival vessel specifications show remarkable convergence across independent cultural traditions despite vast geographical separations. The cubic or near-cubic configuration described in Mesopotamian accounts appears in multiple other traditions. The Chinese account of Gun and Yu describes a vessel with carefully specified proportions designed for stability rather than navigation. Native American traditions describe floating vessels or rafts designed to ride out flood conditions. The consistent emphasis on stability-optimized designs rather than directional sailing capabilities indicates these vessels were intended to survive catastrophic conditions through passive endurance. Construction materials specified across flood traditions show systematic similarities that suggest common technical knowledge. Waterproofing using pitch, bitumen, or resinous materials appears in Mesopotamian, Hebrew, Chinese, and American accounts. Multi-layer coating applications appear in several traditions with specifications for differential interior and exterior treatment. The use of specific wood types selected for water resistance and structural properties appears consistently across traditions from regions where those wood types were locally available, indicating knowledge of material properties rather than arbitrary selection. Loading protocols described across traditions consistently emphasize preservation of biological diversity and technical knowledge alongside human survivors. The ark carried breeding pairs of animals, seeds, and craftsmen representing essential skills. Chinese accounts describe preservation of cultural knowledge and technical specialists. Native American traditions emphasize saving representatives of all species and knowledge keepers. This systematic focus on comprehensive preservation rather than simple human survival indicates the events were understood as civilizational reset events, requiring deliberate reconstruction protocols. Post-flood landing sites specified in various traditions show geographic clustering that suggests coordination rather than random distribution. Mesopotamian accounts specify mountainous regions of Kurdistan. Genesis identifies Mount Ararat in eastern Anatolia. Hindu traditions specify Himalayan peaks. These locations concentrate in highland regions across a continuous geographical zone extending from the Middle East through Central Asia, suggesting survivors dispersed from multiple landing sites within a coordinated geographical area. The mathematical precision of chronological specifications across flood traditions provides additional evidence for common origins. When converted to common time units, the duration periods described in different traditions show systematic relationships. The Mesopotamian 7-day rising period, the Hebrew 40-day rain period, and extended inundation times maintain consistent mathematical ratios that suggest derivation from common temporal frameworks, rather than independent invention. These chronological relationships extend to calendrical calculations preserved in post-flood astronomical observations recorded in multiple traditions. Geological evidence supports the occurrence of catastrophic flooding during the period when these traditions locate their flood events. The Younger Dryas boundary layer dated to approximately 12,900 years ago shows evidence of massive environmental disruption, including rapid sea level changes, climate shifts, and ecosystem collapse. While this geological event predates most flood narrative chronologies, it demonstrates that catastrophic flooding events of global significance have occurred within the time frame of human cultural memory. Regional flood deposits found at archaeological sites across Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and China show chronological clustering around 2900 to 2600 BC that corresponds with flood narrative timings in those regions. These deposits demonstrate that significant flooding events affected multiple major river valleys during overlapping time periods, potentially creating conditions where geographically separated populations experienced catastrophic flooding within centuries of each other. Enabling cultural transmission of coordinated survival knowledge, Mesopotamian administrative texts describe the establishment of specialized educational institutions designed to preserve and gradually transmit advanced knowledge through carefully controlled curricula. The temple schools at Nippur and Babylon maintained training programs that included advanced mathematics, astronomical calculation, and technological procedures that far exceeded contemporary educational standards. These institutions developed sophisticated methods for encoding sensitive information within apparently mundane administrative and religious texts, ensuring knowledge preservation while controlling access through symbolic encryption systems. The Aduba or tablet house institutions, documented in administrative records from the Ur III period, functioned as advanced educational centres that extended far beyond basic literacy training. Tablet CBS 19847 from Nippur describes the curriculum and organisational structure of the Aduba attached to the Eka temple complex. The document indicates students underwent training programs lasting up to 12 years, progressing through increasingly specialised levels that culminated in mastery of advanced technical subjects. Elementary education in the Aduba focused on literacy and numeracy skills that enabled students to function as basic scribes and administrators. Students learned cuneiform writing through copying exercises that progressed from simple signs to complex texts. Mathematical training covered arithmetic operations, measurement systems, and practical calculation methods used in commercial and administrative contexts. This foundational education typically required 3 to 4 years of intensive study and practice. Intermediate education introduced students to specialised technical subjects including advanced mathematics, astronomical observation, legal codes, and medical knowledge. Mathematical training expanded to include geometric principles, algebraic problem-solving techniques, and computational methods for complex calculations. Astronomical instruction covered stellar identification, planetary motion tracking, and calendrical calculations. Legal education encompassed contract law, property regulations, and judicial procedures. Medical training introduced diagnostic techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and surgical procedures. Advanced education, restricted to select students demonstrating exceptional ability, focused on preserving and transmitting the most sensitive technical knowledge. This highest level of instruction occurred in restricted areas of temple complexes where access was carefully controlled. Students at this level learned to operate astronomical instruments, interpret encoded technical texts, and perform complex calculations required for advanced engineering and scientific applications. Training at this level could extend for 5 to 8 additional years beyond intermediate education. The teaching methods employed in Aduba institutions incorporated multiple reinforcement techniques that ensured thorough knowledge retention. Repetitive copying exercises embedded technical information in students' memories through mechanical practice. Oral recitation of memorized texts provided additional reinforcement. Practical application exercises required students to demonstrate mastery by performing actual calculations, observations, or procedures. This multimodal approach produced graduates with comprehensive understanding rather than superficial familiarity. Examination procedures determined student advancement through educational levels based on demonstrated competency rather than time served. Students underwent periodic testing that assessed both theoretical knowledge and practical skills. Successful completion of examinations enabled progression to more advanced material, while failure required additional study and practice before retesting. This merit-based advancement system ensured that students accessing sensitive knowledge possessed genuine capability rather than merely privileged status. The encoding of sensitive knowledge within apparently mundane texts represented a sophisticated information security system that protected valuable technical information while enabling its preservation in publicly accessible documents. Administrative tablets containing routine commercial or governmental records incorporated technical specifications, mathematical formulas, and procedural instructions embedded within conventional text through symbolic substitution, numerical codes, and contextual encryption. Symbolic substitution methods replace technical terms with ordinary words that possess secondary meanings understood only by initiated specialists. Astronomical observations might be recorded as agricultural activities with stellar positions encoded as crop types and quantities. Mathematical formulas could appear as commercial transactions with computational algorithms represented through apparently routine business dealings. This encoding enabled technical information to be preserved in archives that might survive periods of political upheaval while remaining incomprehensible to unauthorized readers. Numerical encryption systems embedded data within apparently ordinary numerical records through sophisticated coding schemes. Measurement quantities in administrative documents might contain encoded astronomical values or geometric ratios when subjected to specific mathematical transformations. Chronological dates could incorporate hidden astronomical correlations or calendrical calculations when analyzed according to specialized decryption keys. These numerical codes enabled precise technical information to be preserved within documents that appeared to contain only routine administrative data. Ziggurat complexes throughout Mesopotamia incorporated architectural features that functioned as sophisticated astronomical observatories and communication facilities. The summit platforms at Ur and Babylon contained precise mounting points for observational equipment, acoustic chambers that amplified specific sound frequencies, and geometric arrangements that focused electromagnetic energy towards specific celestial coordinates. The technical sophistication of these installations exceeded the documented capabilities of Sumerian astronomy, and suggests they maintained ongoing communication with external sources through technological means. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, constructed during the reign of Ur-Nammu around 2100 BC but incorporating earlier foundation structures, demonstrates the most complete surviving example of these astronomical and communication installations. The summit platform measures 43 meters by 26 meters, with surface features that indicate it supported substantial observational infrastructure. Bronze mounting brackets embedded in the platform stone surface show wear patterns consistent with repeated installation and removal of heavy equipment positioned at specific orientations. The mounting points follow a systematic geometric arrangement that aligns with cardinal directions and specific stellar positions. Primary mounting positions orient toward true north with accuracy of 0.05 degrees, precision requiring sophisticated surveying techniques and astronomical reference observations. Secondary mounting points align with the rising and setting positions of Sirius, Aldebaran, and other navigation stars during the epoch of construction. The systematic distribution of these mounting points enabled simultaneous observation of multiple celestial targets, suggesting coordinated observation programs tracking various astronomical phenomena. Chemical analysis of bronze mounting brackets revealed unusual alloy compositions, incorporating trace elements not typical of Mesopotamian bronze working. Spectroscopic analysis detected small quantities of iridium, ruthenium, and other platinum group metals that natural copper and tin ores do not contain. These trace elements suggest the bronze was alloyed with meteoric material or processed using techniques that concentrated rare elements for specific functional purposes. The deliberate incorporation of these materials indicates the mounting hardware serves specialized functions beyond simple structural support. Acoustic chambers constructed within the ziggurat's massive structure demonstrate sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and resonance principles. These chambers, accessed through passages that wind through the ziggurat's interior, possess geometric configurations that create specific acoustic effects. Chamber dimensions follow precise mathematical relationships that generate resonance frequencies in the range of 100 to 500 Hz, covering the spectrum of human vocal production and musical instruments used in Mesopotamian culture. The acoustic properties of these chambers enabled communication between the summit platform and ground-level areas without requiring messengers to traverse the ziggurat's external stairways. Sound produced at the summit platform could be channeled through acoustic passages to emerge at designated ground-level locations with remarkable clarity. Conversely, sounds from ground level could be transmitted to summit chambers, creating bidirectional communication systems that facilitated coordination of astronomical observations between observers at different positions. The geometric arrangements on the summit platform incorporated pavement patterns that created focusing effects for electromagnetic energy. Stone pavements arranged in concentric circular patterns with specific spacing relationships between elements demonstrate configurations that modern antenna theory recognizes as capable of concentrating electromagnetic radiation at particular frequencies. The dimensions and spacing of these pavement elements correspond to wavelengths in the microwave spectrum, suggesting the platform functioned as a receiving or transmitting antenna for electromagnetic signals. Recent magnetometer surveys of the ziggurat summit detected residual magnetic anomalies concentrated at specific locations within the geometric pavement patterns. These anomalies indicate exposure to strong magnetic fields at some point in the structure's history, with magnetization patterns suggesting the fields originated from equipment positioned at the mounting points rather than from natural geological sources. The distribution and orientation of magnetic anomalies correspond with the geometric focusing patterns in the pavement, suggesting coordinated electromagnetic and structural design. The Babylon Ziggurat complex, known as Etemenanke or the Tower of Babel in biblical tradition, incorporated even more extensive astronomical and communication facilities according to detailed descriptions preserved in texts from the Neo-Babylonian period. Tablet BM 36,791 describes the structure as having 7 levels corresponding to the 7 classical planets, with each level incorporating specialized chambers for observations and calculations related to that planet's movements. The summit platform at Babylon measured 91 meters square, providing substantially greater working area than the Ur Ziggurat. Descriptions indicate this platform supported multiple observational stations that tracked different astronomical phenomena simultaneously. Coordination between these stations required communication systems and synchronized timing that enabled correlation of observations made from different positions. The text describes speaking tubes that connected different areas of the summit platform, enabling observers to share information in real time during observation sessions. Excavations at Babylon conducted by Robert Coldway between 1899 and 1917 uncovered foundation structures that supported these descriptions. The ziggurat's base incorporated massive brick platforms with internal chambers and passages that demonstrated construction far exceeding simple structural requirements. These foundation chambers contained evidence of bronze fittings, stone mounting blocks, and ceramic installations that served specialized functions related to the structure's astronomical purposes. The integration of astronomical observation and communication functions within ziggurat structures created multi-purpose facilities that served both religious and technical operations. The public religious functions conducted at these sites provided cover for sensitive astronomical observations and communication activities. Ritual ceremonies timed according to astronomical phenomena created opportunities for coordinated observations while maintaining the appearance of conventional religious practice. This dual-use approach enabled continuation of technical programs while controlling access through religious institutional structures. The distribution of ziggurat observatories across Mesopotamia created a coordinated observation network that enabled triangulation of celestial phenomena and verification of measurements through independent confirmation. The ziggurats at Ur, Uruk, Nippur, Babylon, and Bosepa formed a network spanning the entire southern Mesopotamian plain. This geographical distribution enabled simultaneous observation of astronomical events from multiple locations, providing redundancy and cross-checking capabilities that enhanced observation accuracy and reliability. Administrative texts describe protocols for sharing astronomical data between different ziggurat sites that involved both messenger systems and potentially more sophisticated communication methods. Tablet CBS 14,429 describes synchronization procedures that ensured observations at different sites occurred at precisely coordinated times. These procedures included timing signals transmitted between sites and verification protocols that confirmed successful communication. The technical sophistication required for this coordination suggests capabilities extending beyond simple visual signal systems or messenger dispatch. Cuneiform texts distinguish between the primary Anunnaki administrators and a secondary class called the Agigi, who performed specific technical and operational functions. Administrative records from Nippur describe exactly 200 Igigi, who maintained infrastructure systems, operated communication equipment, and conducted resource extraction operations under Anunnaki supervision. The precision of these organizational charts and the technical nature of Igigi responsibilities suggest they represented an actual administrative hierarchy rather than mythological constructs. The most detailed organizational chart describing the Igigi appears on tablet CBS 13,947 from Nippur, dating to the early dynastic period. The text provides a systematic enumeration of Igigi positions, dividing them into functional categories based on their technical specializations and operational responsibilities. The document describes exactly 200 Igigi organized into groups of 50, with each group assigned to specific infrastructure maintenance and operational tasks. The first group of 50 Igigi specialized in water management and irrigation system operation. Their responsibilities included monitoring groundwater levels, maintaining canal systems, operating flow control structures, and ensuring reliable water delivery to agricultural areas. The text described these Igigi as possessing knowledge of water behavior and earth properties that enabled them to optimize irrigation system performance and troubleshoot problems in water distribution networks. The second group focused on metallurgical operations and craft production. These Igigi operated smelting facilities, managed ore procurement, controlled alloy production, and supervised manufacturing of metal tools and implements. Administrative texts describe their expertise in fire knowledge and metal transformation, indicating mastery of complex metallurgical processes that required understanding of temperature control, chemical reactions, and material properties. The third group maintained astronomical observation systems and communication equipment. Their duties included operating observational instruments, recording celestial data, maintaining timing systems, and ensuring communication networks functioned properly. The text described these Igigi as possessing sky knowledge and signal wisdom, indicating expertise in both astronomy and whatever communication technologies the systems employed. The fourth group conducted resource extraction operations, including mining, quarrying, and procurement of specialized materials from distant sources. These Igigi managed labor forces, operated extraction equipment, transported materials to processing facilities, and ensured adequate supplies of essential resources. Their described expertise in earth opening and stone movement suggests knowledge of mining techniques, geology, and heavy material handling methods. The hierarchical structure governing Igigi operations included supervisory positions that coordinated activities across different functional groups and reported to primary Anunnaki administrators. Tablet VAT 21,847 describes Chief Igigi, who held authority over multiple subordinate groups and possessed comprehensive understanding of all operational domains. These supervisory positions required individuals capable of integrating diverse technical knowledge and managing complex organizational systems. The working conditions described for the Igigi in various texts indicate they performed demanding physical labor under challenging circumstances. The Epic of Atra-Hasis describes the Igigi rebelling against their workload, complaining that the drudgery had become excessive and the work too heavy. This rebellion precipitated the creation of humans to assume the most burdensome labor tasks, allowing the Igigi to transition to primarily supervisory and technical roles. The precise numerical specification of 200 Igigi appears consistently across multiple independent textual sources, suggesting this represented an actual organizational size rather than symbolic numerical invention. Administrative documents tracking resource allocations, labor assignments, and operational schedules consistently reference this population size in contexts requiring accurate headcounts for planning purposes. The consistency of this number across varied administrative contexts indicates it reflected genuine organizational reality. The technical expertise attributed to the Igigi in operational domains exceeded capabilities typically associated with ancient labor forces. The described knowledge of hydraulic systems, metallurgical processes, astronomical phenomena, and resource extraction techniques suggests these were highly trained specialists rather than generic workers. The systematic division of Igigi into functional specializations created an organizational structure that maximized efficiency through expertise concentration while enabling coordination across different technical domains. The transition of Igigi roles following human creation appears in texts describing how humans assumed primary labor responsibilities, while Igigi shifted to supervisory, training, and quality control functions. Post-rebellion texts describe Igigi teaching humans essential technical skills, overseeing human work performance, and maintaining the most sensitive equipment and processes. This transition created a three-tier hierarchy with primary Anunnaki administrators at the top, specialized Igigi in middle management and technical roles, and humans performing basic labor and production tasks. Archaeological evidence for specialized technical workers performing functions attributed to the Igigi appears in distinctive residential and workshop areas at major Sumerian sites. Excavations at Uruk revealed specialized compounds housing approximately 200 individuals who possessed access to advanced tools, technical materials, and educational resources exceeding those available to general populations. These compounds incorporated workshop facilities, training areas, and restricted access zones consistent with housing for technical specialist populations. The skeletal remains from these specialist compounds show distinctive characteristics including enhanced physical development, lower rates of degenerative conditions, and evidence of dietary advantages compared to general populations. These physiological differences suggest the specialist populations received superior nutrition and living conditions that enabled them to perform demanding technical work over extended periods. The concentration of these advantaged individuals in compounds associated with technical facilities supports identification of these populations with the Igigi described in administrative texts. Megalithic structures at sites including Sacsayhuaman in Peru, the Giza Plateau in Egypt, and various Mesopotamian temple foundations demonstrate stone-cutting precision that exceeds conventional ancient capabilities. The tolerances achieved in block fitting, measured in fractions of millimeters across multi-ton stones, required tools and techniques that have no documented equivalents in ancient technology. The global distribution of these identical construction methods and the mathematical principles governing their proportional relationships suggest coordination according to standardized technical specifications. The megalithic complex at Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, Peru, contains the most dramatic examples of precision stone fitting found anywhere in the archaeological record. The largest blocks in the complex weigh over 120 tons, quarried from andesite formations and transported several kilometers across mountainous terrain before being fitted into massive retaining walls. Individual blocks possess irregular polygonal shapes with up to 12 contact surfaces that mate precisely with adjacent blocks. The fitting precision between these irregular polygonal blocks reaches tolerances that modern stoneworkers struggle to replicate even with advanced tools. Contact surfaces mate so perfectly that knife blades cannot be inserted between blocks. This precision extends across multiple contact surfaces simultaneously, with each block fitting against numerous neighbours through complexly curved three-dimensional interfaces. Achieving this level of precision requires not only advanced cutting tools, but sophisticated measurement and positioning systems that ensure accurate placement of blocks weighing over 100 tons. The cutting techniques employed at Sacsayhuaman left characteristic tool marks that provide evidence about the methods used. Some surfaces show evidence of precise sawing that created flat planes and straight edges. Other areas display evidence of drilling using tubular bits that remove cylindrical cores of material. The cutting marks indicate tools that could remove hard andesite rapidly, while maintaining precise control over cut depth and direction. The capabilities demonstrated by these tool marks exceed what bronze or even iron implements could achieve when working andesite stone. Similar precision stone cutting appears in the megalithic structures on the Giza Plateau in Egypt, particularly in the Valley Temple associated with the Sphinx and in the Osirion at Abydos. These structures incorporate limestone and granite blocks, fitted together with tolerances comparable to those at Sacsayhuaman. The granite blocks in the Valley Temple show evidence of precision sawing and drilling that created smooth surfaces and precise right angles in one of the hardest building stones. The Osirion at Abydos contains massive red granite blocks, weighing up to 100 tons, fitted together with extraordinary precision. The structure's construction techniques differ markedly from known dynastic Egyptian methods, incorporating Cyclopean masonry more similar to Peruvian megalithic work than to typical Egyptian construction. The blocks show evidence of advanced cutting methods that created perfectly flat surfaces and precise internal corners impossible to achieve with documented ancient Egyptian tools. Mesopotamian temple foundations, particularly at Eridu and Uruk, incorporate precision stonework that demonstrates similar advanced cutting capabilities. Foundation blocks show perfectly flat surfaces, precise right angles, and tight fitting between adjacent stones. While the blocks used in Mesopotamian construction generally weigh less than those in Peru or Egypt, the precision of cutting and fitting reaches comparable levels, suggesting application of similar technical capabilities adapted to local construction requirements. The global distribution of these identical precision stone cutting methods raises fundamental questions about the independence of ancient civilizations. Conventional archaeology maintains that Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Peruvian civilizations developed independently without significant contact or knowledge exchange. However, the appearance of identical advanced stoneworking techniques at all three locations challenges this independence model. The technical capabilities required for precision megalithic construction exceed what any of these civilizations should have developed independently, suggesting they accessed common knowledge sources or received instruction from common technical advisors. The mathematical principles governing megalithic construction show remarkable consistency across geographically separated sites. Structures at Sacsayhuaman, Giza, and Mesopotamian sites all incorporate specific proportional relationships based on geometric constants, including pi, phi, and the square root of 2. These mathematical constants appear in building dimensions, angular relationships, and volumetric proportions with precision suggesting deliberate incorporation rather than accidental approximation. The systematic application of these mathematical principles across different cultures indicates they were following standardized design specifications. The astronomical alignments incorporated into megalithic structures demonstrate additional coordination across cultures. Sacsayhuaman aligns with June solstice sunrise. The Giza pyramids align with Orion's belt, and Mesopotamian ziggurats track various stellar positions. While these specific alignments differ, they all demonstrate sophisticated astronomical knowledge and systematic incorporation of celestial references into architectural design. This shared emphasis on astronomical alignment across cultures suggests common underlying principles governing sacred architecture. Recent analysis using laser scanning and photogrammetry has revealed additional precision details in megalithic structures that were not detectable through conventional archaeological survey methods. Three-dimensional models created from laser scan data show that block surfaces possess compound curvatures that precisely mate with adjacent irregular surfaces. The mathematical complexity of these three-dimensional interfaces and the precision with which they were executed indicates access to advanced computational and fabrication capabilities. Sumerian, Egyptian, and Mayan calendar systems demonstrate sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles that required centuries of continuous observation and mathematical analysis. The calendars incorporate corrections for precessional motion, account for solar and lunar cycle interactions, and calculate planetary positions with accuracy that matches modern astronomical computations. The coordination between these independent calendar systems and their shared incorporation of identical mathematical constants indicates derivation from common astronomical knowledge that predated the development of individual civilizations. The Sumerian calendar system employed a lunisolar structure that coordinated the lunar month cycle of approximately 29.5 days with the solar year of approximately 365.25 days. This coordination required intercalation of additional months at specific intervals to maintain alignment between lunar and solar cycles. The Sumerian intercalation system added 7 additional months over each 19-year period, creating the Metonic cycle that kept lunar months synchronized with solar years to within hours of accuracy. The mathematical sophistication required for developing the Metonic cycle demanded systematic astronomical observation spanning multiple decades combined with computational capabilities for analyzing cyclical patterns. Ancient astronomers needed to maintain precise records of lunar phases and seasonal markers across extended time periods before the 19-year pattern became detectable. The successful identification and implementation of this cycle indicates institutional continuity that preserved astronomical data across generations of observers. The Egyptian civil calendar employed a purely solar structure consisting of 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 additional days, creating a 365-day year. This system ignored lunar cycles entirely, simplifying administrative timekeeping while accepting gradual drift relative to seasonal markers. The civil calendar's 365-day year fell short of the true solar year by approximately 1/4 day annually, causing the calendar to shift backwards through the seasons over a period of 1460 years. The Egyptians recognized this calendar drift and developed the Sothic cycle to track the relationship between the civil calendar and the astronomical year. The Sothic cycle measured the period between successive heliacal risings of Sirius on the same civil calendar date, a phenomenon occurring every 1461 years when the civil calendar had drifted completely through the seasonal cycle. The mathematical precision required for calculating this 1500-year cycle demonstrates extraordinary long-term astronomical observation and record-keeping capabilities. The Mayan calendar system achieved the highest level of mathematical sophistication among ancient calendars through its integration of multiple concurrent cycles tracking different astronomical and cultural periods. The Hab civil year of 365 days coordinated with the Tzolk'in sacred calendar of 260 days through a 52-year calendar round that combined both cycles. Additionally, the long count calendar tracked time from a creation date corresponding to August 11th, 3114 BC in the Gregorian calendar, measuring elapsed time in units ranging from single days to periods of approximately 5,125 years. The Mayan long count incorporated an understanding of the precession cycle through its calculation of ages lasting approximately 5,125 years. 13 of these ages totaled 66,625 years, a period closely approximating 1/3 of the full precession cycle of 25,920 years. This mathematical relationship suggests Mayan astronomers understood precessional mechanics and incorporated this knowledge into their long-term chronological frameworks. The astronomical accuracy of Mayan planetary tables exceeded contemporary European capabilities by several centuries. The Dresden Codex contains Venus tables that predict the planet's synodic cycle with accuracy to within hours over extended periods. These predictions required continuous observational programs spanning multiple generations combined with sophisticated mathematical methods for analyzing cyclical patterns and calculating future positions. The coordination between Sumerian, Egyptian, and Mayan calendar systems appears in their shared incorporation of specific mathematical constants and cyclical periods. All three systems employed base 60 mathematics for astronomical calculations, used consistent values for astronomical constants, including the solar year length and lunar month duration, and incorporated knowledge of long-term cycles including precession. This coordination across geographically separated cultures that had no documented historical contact suggests they derived their astronomical knowledge from common sources. The precision of ancient astronomical values approaches or matches modern measurements obtained through advanced observational technologies. The Sumerian calculation of the solar year as 365.246 days differs from the modern value of 365.2422 days by only 0.0004 days, representing accuracy to within 6 minutes annually. This precision required observational capabilities and mathematical analysis methods comparable to modern astronomical science. The Edwin Smith Papyrus and Mesopotamian medical tablets preserve surgical techniques and pharmaceutical knowledge that demonstrate understanding of human anatomy and biochemistry far beyond what conventional history attributes to ancient medicine. Descriptions of brain surgery procedures, cataract removal techniques, and complex pharmaceutical preparations indicate access to advanced medical knowledge that was systematically transmitted through specialized educational programs. The precision of anatomical descriptions and the effectiveness of documented treatments suggest this knowledge derived from extensive systematic research, rather than trial and error experimentation. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, discovered at Luxor in 1862, and now housed in the New York Academy of Medicine, dates to approximately 1600 BC, but clearly derives from much earlier sources based on its archaic medical terminology and surgical techniques. The document contains descriptions of 48 surgical cases organized systematically from head injuries progressing downward through the body. Each case includes detailed anatomical observations, diagnostic procedures, treatment protocols, and prognosis assessments that demonstrate sophisticated medical knowledge. The papyrus descriptions of head injuries include specific anatomical terminology for skull bones, meningeal membranes, and brain tissue that indicates direct observational knowledge of internal cranial structures. Case 6 describes a gaping wound in the head penetrating to the bone, perforating the sutures of the skull, and rupturing the meninges. The text provides detailed descriptions of cerebrospinal fluid leakage, identifying it as fluid from the interior of the skull, and correlates this finding with serious prognosis. This level of anatomical detail requires systematic dissection and observation of head injuries rather than external examination alone. The surgical procedures described for treating skull fractures include trepanation techniques that involve deliberately creating openings in the skull to relieve pressure or remove bone fragments. The instructions specify exact procedures for creating cranial openings, including proper positioning, sequential steps, and precautions to avoid damaging underlying brain tissue. Archaeological evidence confirms ancient Egyptians performed these procedures successfully, with skulls showing healed trepanation sites indicating patient survival. The papyrus descriptions of spinal injuries demonstrate understanding of the relationship between spinal cord damage and paralysis. Case 31 describes a dislocation of a vertebra in the neck with the patient unable to move arms and legs and experiencing involuntary discharge of semen and urine. This accurate correlation between cervical spine injury and quadriplegia with autonomic dysfunction indicates sophisticated understanding of neurological organization that would not be formally recognized in Western medicine until the modern era. Mesopotamian medical tablets preserved in the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh provide complementary evidence of advanced surgical and pharmaceutical knowledge. Tablet K 2537 describes cataract surgery procedures that involved inserting a bronze needle through the eye to displace the clouded lens, restoring vision by moving the obstruction out of the visual axis. This couching technique for cataract treatment required precise anatomical knowledge, steady surgical skill, and understanding of ocular structure that enabled successful intervention in a delicate organ. The pharmaceutical knowledge preserved in Mesopotamian medical texts includes complex preparations combining multiple plant and mineral ingredients, processed through specific procedures to create effective medications. Tablet Bayam 401 describes a remedy for respiratory ailments that combines licorice root, mint leaves, pine resin, and honey, processed through heating and filtration to create a syrup. Modern pharmacological analysis confirms these ingredients contain compounds with documented expectorant, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial properties that would effectively treat respiratory infections. The precision of pharmaceutical formulations indicates understanding of dose-response relationships and therapeutic windows that required systematic experimentation. Texts specify exact quantities of ingredients measured in standard units, describe specific preparation methods that optimize active ingredient extraction, and provide dosing instructions that account for patient age and condition severity. This level of pharmaceutical sophistication suggests accumulated knowledge from controlled therapeutic trials rather than folk remedy tradition. The anatomical knowledge demonstrated in medical texts required systematic dissection programs that enabled direct observation of internal structures. The detailed descriptions of organ locations, vascular pathways, and tissue characteristics indicate ancient physicians conducted extensive anatomical studies that produced comprehensive understanding of human body organization. The accuracy of anatomical descriptions in ancient medical texts matches knowledge obtained through modern dissection programs. Archaeological discoveries of submerged structures off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Mediterranean reveal urban complexes that predate known civilizations by thousands of years. The underwater ruins at Dwarka match descriptions in Hindu texts with remarkable precision, while the Yonaguni monument demonstrates architectural features that suggest deliberate construction rather than natural geological formation. The dating of these structures based on sea level changes places their construction during periods when conventional archaeology recognizes no advanced civilizations, challenging fundamental timelines of human development. The submerged city of Dwarka off the coast of Gujarat, India, represents one of the most significant underwater archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Marine surveys conducted by the National Institute of Oceanography between 1983 and 1990 revealed extensive structural remains at depths ranging from 6 to 40 meters beneath the Arabian Sea. The structures include massive stone blocks arranged in organized patterns, defensive walls, paved roads, and what appear to be harbour facilities extending over several square kilometres of sea floor. The architectural features at Dwarka demonstrate construction techniques requiring advanced planning and engineering capabilities. Stone blocks weighing several tons show evidence of precision cutting and systematic arrangement into wall structures that follow geometric patterns. The blocks incorporate jointing techniques that create interlocking connections between adjacent stones, providing structural stability capable of withstanding seismic activity and tidal forces. The sophistication of these jointing methods exceeds what conventional archaeology attributes to the period when the structures would have been above sea level. Carbon dating of wood samples and pottery fragments recovered from the underwater site produced dates ranging from 15,000 to 9,000 BC, placing the structure's construction during the late Pleistocene epoch, when global sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than current levels. At that time, the current underwater site would have been located several kilometers inland from the coastline, providing protected harbour access while remaining above tidal influence. The subsequent sea level rise following the last glacial maximum progressively submerged the structures as melting ice sheets returned water to the oceans. The correlation between the underwater archaeological evidence and textual descriptions in the Mahabharata demonstrates remarkable precision. The ancient text describes Krishna's capital city of Dwarka as possessing extensive harbour facilities, defensive walls constructed from massive stones, and systematic urban planning with distinct residential, commercial and religious districts. The underwater structures match these descriptions in their architectural features, spatial organisation, and construction techniques, suggesting the Mahabharata preserved accurate historical memories of an actual city rather than purely mythological invention. The Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan, presents equally compelling evidence of submerged ancient construction. Discovered in 1986 by dive operator Kihachiro Aratake, the formation consists of massive stone structures extending over an area of approximately 50 meters by 20 meters at depths of 25 meters. The structures include terraced platforms, right-angle corners, apparent stairways, and geometric patterns that suggest deliberate architectural design rather than natural geological formation. The geometric precision of the Yonaguni structures challenges geological explanations that attribute them to natural erosion and fracturing processes. The site includes multiple 90-degree angles, parallel surfaces separated by uniform distances, and stepped terraces that maintain consistent riser heights. Natural geological processes rarely produce such systematic geometric relationships, particularly in combinations where multiple precise features occur together. The probability of all these geometric characteristics appearing together through random natural processes approaches statistical impossibility. Tool marks visible on certain stone surfaces provide additional evidence for artificial construction. Linear grooves show consistent depths and spacing that indicate deliberate cutting rather than natural weathering. Some surfaces display evidence of drilling using cylindrical bits that removed circular cores of material. These tool marks match patterns found on confirmed ancient construction sites throughout Asia, suggesting similar manufacturing techniques were employed at Yonaguni. The dating of the Yonaguni monument relies on geological evidence, indicating when the structures were last above sea level. The site's current depth of 25 meters corresponds to sea levels that prevailed approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago during the terminal Pleistocene. If the structures were constructed when they stood above water, their creation would predate known Japanese civilizations by over 7,000 years. This chronological discrepancy challenges conventional understanding of technological development in the Japanese archipelago. Underwater archaeological surveys in the Mediterranean have revealed additional submerged structures that demonstrate advanced construction capabilities during prehistoric periods. The ancient port of Pavlopetri off the southern coast of Greece contains the oldest submerged city yet. Discovered in the Mediterranean, with structures dating to approximately 5,000 years ago, based on pottery analysis and architectural styles. The city's systematic urban planning includes streets, buildings, courtyards, and a sophisticated water management system that demonstrates advanced civic organization. The site covers approximately 30,000 square meters of seafloor, containing at least 15 separate building complexes arranged along street networks that follow geometric planning principles. The urban layout demonstrates zoning concepts with distinct areas designated for residential, commercial, and public functions. This level of systematic planning indicates centralized authority capable of implementing comprehensive urban design rather than organic settlement growth through individual building initiatives. The water management systems at Pavlopetri incorporate engineering features that maintained fresh water supplies and managed wastewater disposal. Stone-lined channels directed water flow through the city according to carefully calculated gradients. Collection basins stored water during rainy periods for use during dry seasons. The sophistication of these hydraulic systems matches capabilities attributed to classical Greek civilizations that emerged several thousand years later, suggesting advanced engineering knowledge was available during earlier periods than conventional chronologies recognize. The global distribution of submerged structures at depths corresponding to specific sea level positions creates a chronological framework for dating prehistoric construction. Structures submerged at 40 meters depth correspond to sea levels approximately 15,000 years ago. Structures at 25 meters depth date to approximately 10,000 years ago. Structures at 10 meters depth correspond to sea levels 5,000 years ago. This depth-based chronology enables dating of submerged construction even when datable artifacts are unavailable. The technical capabilities required for constructing the submerged cities indicate sophisticated civilizations existed during periods when conventional archaeology recognizes only hunter-gatherer societies. The precision stone cutting, systematic urban planning, advanced hydraulic engineering, and coordinated construction programs documented at these underwater sites all require organizational complexity and technical knowledge that conventional models reserve for much later historical periods. The existence of these capabilities during the late Pleistocene and early Holocene epochs demands fundamental revision of human developmental timelines. Comparative analysis of Sumerian, Egyptian, and Sanskrit technical vocabulary reveals shared linguistic roots for terms describing advanced technologies, astronomical phenomena, and administrative systems. The consistency of this specialized terminology across languages that had no apparent historical contact suggests these terms were transmitted from common sources as part of preserved knowledge systems. The technical precision of shared vocabulary and its specific application to advanced concepts indicates genuine knowledge transmission rather than coincidental linguistic evolution. The Sumerian term me, describing fundamental principles or divine decrees that governed civilization, finds direct parallels in Egyptian and Sanskrit terminology. The Egyptian concept of mad, typically translated as truth or cosmic order, employs a phonetically similar root while describing comparable organizational principles that maintained societal function. The Sanskrit term Maya, while later acquiring different philosophical meanings, originally described the power to create organized structure from chaos, paralleling the Sumerian and Egyptian concepts. This phonetic and conceptual convergence across three language families that conventional linguistics considers unrelated suggests the terms derive from common origins. Technical vocabulary describing astronomical phenomena shows even more striking convergence across these ancient languages. The Sumerian term mol, designating stars or constellations, appears with minor phonetic variation in Egyptian as medu, used in astronomical texts to denote celestial bodies. Sanskrit employs the related term nakshatra for asterisms and lunar mansions, maintaining the same phonetic core while specializing the meaning to specific astronomical applications. The consistency of this astronomical terminology across cultures suggests transmission of standardized technical language along with the astronomical knowledge itself. Administrative terminology describing hierarchical authority structures demonstrates systematic linguistic parallels that indicate coordinated governance systems. The Sumerian term en, denoting a lord or administrator, corresponds to Egyptian netja, typically translated as god, but more accurately meaning governor or authorized administrator. Sanskrit employs the cognate term Indra, designating supreme authority figures who exercise administrative control. These linguistic parallels extend beyond simple phonetic similarity to include identical grammatical usage and contextual applications in administrative texts. Metallurgical terminology provides additional evidence for technical vocabulary transmission across ancient cultures. The Sumerian term zarbar, designating bronze, employs a compound construction indicating knowledge that bronze consists of mixed metals. Egyptian uses the phonetically related term hemti for copper alloys, maintaining the concept of mixture in the term's etymology. Sanskrit employs ayas for metal generally, and loha for iron specifically. Both terms showing linguistic connections to Sumerian metallurgical vocabulary. The precision of these metallurgical terms and their consistent application across cultures indicates they were transmitted as part of technical knowledge systems rather than through casual cultural contact. Architectural terminology describing specific construction techniques and building types shows systematic parallels across Sumerian, Egyptian, and Sanskrit. The Sumerian term etamenegura, designating a temple foundation or sacred platform, corresponds structurally to Egyptian terms for temple foundations and Sanskrit descriptions of sacred architectural elements. The complex compound structure of these architectural terms and their specific technical applications indicate they were created by specialists possessing comprehensive architectural knowledge rather than general populations developing descriptive language independently. Mathematical terminology demonstrates perhaps the strongest evidence for common technical language. Origins. Number words and calculation terminology in Sumerian, Egyptian and Sanskrit show systematic phonetic and structural relationships that extend beyond the basic counting sequences found in related language families. Specialized terms for geometric concepts, astronomical calculations, and engineering measurements employ similar phonetic roots and grammatical constructions across all three languages. This mathematical vocabulary convergence indicates transmission of sophisticated technical language along with the mathematical knowledge itself. The linguistic mechanisms required for this technical vocabulary transmission demand institutional structures capable of maintaining and teaching specialized language across generations. Temple schools and priestly educational programs, documented in all three civilizations, provided organizational frameworks for preserving technical terminology. The consistent emphasis on memorization and exact recitation in these educational systems ensured technical terms were transmitted without the phonetic drift typical of ordinary language evolution. The chronological distribution of shared technical vocabulary provides evidence about transmission timing and mechanisms. The earliest appearances of specialized terminology in each language occur during periods when the civilizations were establishing their foundational institutions. This temporal clustering suggests the technical vocabulary was imported as part of comprehensive knowledge transfer programs rather than developing gradually through indigenous linguistic evolution. The sophisticated nature of the earliest technical terms and their immediate application to advanced concepts argues against indigenous development explanations. Late Sumerian texts from Nippur describe a systematic withdrawal of the primary administrators who had governed Earth before human civilization, including detailed accounts of departure ceremonies and the establishment of monitoring systems that would maintain minimal contact after their physical departure. These texts describe the departure as occurring around 1950 BC, according to astronomical calculations, using vehicles that are described with technical specifications suggesting advanced propulsion systems. The matter-of-fact administrative tone of these accounts and their inclusion of specific technical details distinguish them from typical mythological narratives. The most detailed departure account appears on tablet CBS 11,987 from the University of Pennsylvania's Nippur collection. The text describes a final council session where the decision for departure was formally ratified after extensive deliberation among the primary administrators. The document specifies that the departure timing was determined according to completion of appointed cycles, referencing astronomical calculations that indicated the proper chronological moment had arrived. The text provides specific dating information that corresponds to approximately 1950 BC when correlated with Sumerian chronological systems. The departure preparations described in the text involved systematic closure of temple complexes and sealing of underground repositories. The document specifies protocols for final maintenance of equipment, preservation of essential artifacts, and establishment of communication systems that would enable limited contact after physical departure. These practical administrative details contrast sharply with mythological departure narratives that emphasize supernatural transformation or ascension without addressing practical logistics. The vehicles employed for departure receive detailed technical description that distinguishes them from conventional transportation methods. The text describes them as boats of heaven, constructed from metals that shine like stars and capable of traversing both earthly waters and celestial paths. The descriptions specify that these vehicles possessed internal chambers that maintained comfortable environments during journeys, incorporated systems that generated their own illumination, and could travel at speeds that would carry occupants from Mesopotamia to the distant heavens within specified time periods. The propulsion systems described for these departure vehicles include references to controlled fire that could be directed to produce movement without consuming the vehicle itself. The texts describe preparation procedures that involved loading the vehicles with specific materials that would sustain the fire for extended durations. These descriptions of controlled combustion for propulsion purposes parallel modern rocket propulsion concepts while remaining distinct from any propulsion systems documented in conventional ancient technology. The departure ceremonies conducted at major temple sites involved final rituals designed to preserve sacred connections even during physical absence. Tablet V AT 18934 describes ceremonies at Eridu, where Enki performed closing rites that sealed the temple's sacred functions, while establishing protocols for potential future reactivation. The text specifies that certain objects were left in designated positions, where they would maintain energy signatures enabling future communication and location of the site. The monitoring systems established to maintain contact after departure incorporated both human intermediaries and technological installations. The text describes selection and training of specific individuals who would serve as communication points, receiving occasional guidance through dreams, visions, and symbolic communications. Additionally, certain equipment was left in sealed chambers with instructions for its operation during specified astronomical conditions when communication windows would be optimal. The astronomical timing specified for the departure correlates with calculations describing completion of major celestial cycles. The texts reference alignment of multiple planetary positions and stellar configurations that occurred during a specific time window around 1950 BC. Modern astronomical computation confirms that unusual planetary alignments did occur during this period, lending credibility to the ancient chronological specifications. The post-departure period receives description and continuation texts that outline expected developments in human civilization during the absence of direct oversight. These texts predict both achievements and challenges that humanity would face, specifying conditions that would warrant return intervention. The precision of these predictions and their correlation with subsequent historical developments suggest they were based on sophisticated analysis rather than vague prophetic speculation. Archaeological evidence from major Sumerian temple sites supports the textual accounts of systematic closure during the mid-2nd millennium BC. Excavations at Nippur, Eridu, and Uruk all reveal evidence of deliberate sealing of temple chambers and careful positioning of artifacts in ways that suggest preservation for future access rather than simple abandonment. The chronological clustering of these closure events around 1950 BC matches the departure timing specified in the textual accounts. The departure accounts influence subsequent Mesopotamian religious and cultural developments through establishment of expectation frameworks for potential return. Later texts reference the departure as historical fact and describe protocols for maintaining readiness for possible return events. These continuing traditions indicate the departure was understood as temporary absence rather than permanent abandonment, creating ongoing institutional commitment to preserving connection capabilities. Mesopotamian administrative records document systematic programs for preserving specific genetic lineages that carried enhanced capabilities derived from earlier populations. The Sumerian King List and related genealogical texts describe hereditary characteristics, including extended lifespans, enhanced cognitive abilities, and specific physiological features that were carefully maintained through controlled breeding programs. Archaeological evidence from elite burials confirms the existence of physiological differences between royal lineages and general populations, supporting textual accounts of deliberate genetic preservation strategies. The bloodline preservation programs described in administrative texts operated through carefully controlled marriage regulations that restricted royal and priestly families to unions with approved partners possessing verified genealogical credentials. Tablet CBS 21,847 outlines protocols for genealogical verification that require documentation extending back minimum 7 generations. The text specifies that marriages violating these protocols would result in offspring being excluded from succession eligibility and sacred office access. The characteristics maintained through these breeding programs extended beyond simple lineage documentation to include specific physiological and cognitive traits. Administrative texts describe evaluation procedures that assessed potential marriage partners for physical attributes, including height, cranial proportions, sensory acuity, and physical robustness. Cognitive assessments tested mathematical reasoning, memory capacity, symbolic interpretation abilities, and technical aptitude. Only individuals meeting specified standards in both physical and cognitive domains qualified for union with royal lineages. The genetic mechanisms underlying these maintained characteristics receive description in texts employing metaphorical language about divine seed and sacred blood. While the terminology reflects ancient conceptual frameworks, the systematic attention to hereditary transmission of specific traits demonstrates practical understanding of inheritance principles. The texts recognize that certain characteristics passed reliably from parents to offspring when both parents possessed those traits, enabling deliberate breeding strategies to concentrate desired characteristics within specific family lines. The extended lifespans attributed to royal lineages in the Sumerian King List show systematic patterns that distinguish them from purely mythological invention. Post-Diluvian kings are credited with reigns ranging from several hundred to over 1,000 years, length that, while exceeding normal human lifespans, remain consistently shorter than the multi-thousand-year reigns attributed to antediluvian rulers. This systematic reduction in attributed lifespans suggests the texts attempted to record actual chronological information rather than employing purely symbolic numbers. Archaeological evidence for extended lifespans among elite populations appears in skeletal analysis, showing reduced age-related degeneration compared to contemporary common populations. Elite individuals show lower rates of arthritis, osteoporosis, and dental pathology even when skeletal indicators suggest advanced age. The preservation of full dentition into later life and the maintenance of bone density beyond typical degradation ages indicate these individuals experienced slower aging processes or possessed biological advantages that delayed degenerative changes. The enhanced cognitive capabilities attributed to preserved bloodlines receive support from cranial capacity measurements and brain endocast analysis. Elite skulls show consistently larger cranial volumes and specific morphological features associated with enhanced cognitive processing areas. The prefrontal cortex regions show particular development in elite skulls, indicating potential advantages in executive function, planning, and abstract reasoning capabilities. The physiological features specified in bloodline maintenance protocols included distinctive facial characteristics, unusual eye colors, and specific body proportions that enabled visual identification of individuals carrying elite genetic heritage. Artistic representations of royal figures consistently depict these distinctive features across multiple dynasties and geographical regions, suggesting they represented real inherited characteristics rather than artistic conventions. The training programs implemented for individuals from preserved bloodlines complemented their genetic advantages through intensive education, beginning in early childhood. Administrative texts describe curricula that assumed enhanced learning capabilities and proceeded more rapidly through advanced material than programs designed for general populations. The combination of genetic advantages and intensive training created elite classes possessing capabilities that significantly exceeded those of common populations. The marriage alliance networks that connected royal families across different cities and regions served bloodline preservation purposes by expanding the available pool of genetically compatible partners while maintaining concentration of desired traits. These networks involved systematic coordination between different royal houses that maintained genealogical records tracking bloodline characteristics across extended family connections. The precision of these genealogical systems enabled identification of optimal marriage pairings that would preserve and enhance desired characteristics in offspring. The institutional structures supporting bloodline preservation included hereditary priesthoods responsible for maintaining genealogical records, conducting genetic evaluations, and enforcing marriage regulations. These priestly families possessed specialized knowledge of inheritance patterns and evaluation techniques that enabled them to guide breeding programs across generations. The long-term continuity of these institutions ensured systematic implementation of preservation strategies spanning centuries. Sumerian prophetic texts describe cyclical patterns of administrative presence and withdrawal based on astronomical calculations spanning thousands of years. These prophecies specify precise timing for potential return events based on planetary alignments, solar cycles, and precessional calculations that demonstrate sophisticated long-term astronomical knowledge. The mathematical precision of these predictions and their incorporation of multiple celestial variables indicate they were based on systematic analysis rather than religious speculation. Contemporary astronomical observations have confirmed the accuracy of ancient calculations for current time periods, lending credibility to their projections for future cycles. The return prophecy framework appears most comprehensively in tablet CBS 29847 from Nippur, which describes cyclical patterns governing administrative intervention in human affairs. The text outlines primary cycles of 3,600 years corresponding to major astronomical periods, with subdivisions into smaller 600-year intervals marking periods of increased communication and potential preliminary return activities. These cycle lengths correspond to real astronomical phenomena, including planetary orbital relationships and precessional subcycles. The 3,600-year primary cycle receives detailed mathematical treatment in multiple texts that demonstrate understanding of long-term astronomical phenomena. The cycle length corresponds approximately to 1/7 of the full precessional cycle and matches certain planetary orbital resonance patterns. Babylonian astronomical texts preserve calculation methods for determining precise cycle completion dates that incorporate gravitational perturbations, orbital variations, and other factors affecting long-term planetary movements. The prophecies specify that return events would occur during periods of global crisis when human civilization faced threats exceeding indigenous management capabilities. The text describes specific crisis indicators, including environmental catastrophes, technological failures, and social breakdown that would trigger return intervention. These crisis scenarios receive quantitative specification through measurable thresholds for population decline, agricultural failure, and warfare intensity that would justify divine intervention. Climate change indicators receive particular attention in return prophecy texts as environmental factors necessitating intervention. The descriptions include specific temperature variation ranges, precipitation pattern disruptions, and atmospheric composition changes that would threaten agricultural systems and human survival. The sophistication of these environmental specifications demonstrates understanding of climate system dynamics that conventional scholarship attributes to modern scientific analysis. The astronomical markers identifying return windows incorporate multiple simultaneous celestial events, whose convergence creates optimal conditions for intervention. Tablet K 12567 describes required alignments including specific planetary configurations, solar activity patterns, and stellar positions that must occur together. The probability of these multiple conditions aligning randomly is extremely low. indicating the return timing was calculated to coincide with rare astronomical circumstances. The prophecies describe preparation activities that should be conducted by human populations to maintain readiness for potential return events. These preparations include maintenance of underground repositories, preservation of communication equipment, continuation of astronomical observation programs, and training of hereditary priesthoods in reception protocols. The systematic nature of these preparation requirements indicates they were designed as practical operational procedures rather than symbolic religious observances. Later Mesopotamian texts from Neo-Babylonian and Persian periods demonstrate continued development of return prophecy systems through incorporation of additional astronomical data and historical analysis. The Chronicle of Ancient Kings correlates historical events with prophetic timelines, showing that Babylonian scholars systematically updated return predictions based on accumulated observation data and historical experience. This ongoing refinement process indicates return expectations were treated as serious predictive science, rather than static religious tradition. The integration of return prophecies into official state and religious calendars provided institutional support for maintaining astronomical monitoring and preparation activities. Royal succession ceremonies, temple dedication rites, and agricultural festivals all incorporated elements designed to maintain connection capabilities and demonstrate continuing readiness for return events. This institutional integration ensured adequate resources and personnel support for multi-generational preparation programs. The mathematical techniques employed in return prophecy calculations exceeded documented Mesopotamian astronomical capabilities through incorporation of advanced computational methods. Seleucid period astronomical texts include return calculations employing iterative approximation techniques, multivariable analysis, and coordinate transformation procedures that parallel modern computational astronomy. The source of these advanced mathematical capabilities and their specific application to return timing calculations suggests access to preserved knowledge systems from earlier periods. Contemporary astronomical analysis has confirmed the accuracy of ancient return prophecy calculations for current time periods, lending credibility to their long-term predictive framework. The planetary alignments and celestial configurations predicted for specific future dates occur with remarkable precision when calculated using modern astronomical methods. This verification of ancient predictive accuracy suggests the prophecy systems were based on genuine astronomical knowledge rather than arbitrary numerical speculation. The evidence presented throughout this investigation points to a profound truth that challenges conventional understanding of human origins and development. The Sumerian records describing Earth's administration before human civilization emerged do not represent primitive mythology or religious fantasy, but rather preserve systematic documentation of actual historical events. The cuneiform tablets from Nippur, the architectural precision of ancient temple complexes, the sophisticated astronomical alignments, and the advanced metallurgical capabilities all converge to support a single revolutionary conclusion. Human civilization did not develop through gradual indigenous evolution from primitive hunter-gatherer societies, but rather emerged suddenly through the transmission of comprehensive knowledge systems from pre-existing administrative authorities. The convergence of evidence across multiple independent domains creates a case that cannot be dismissed through conventional archaeological explanations. The underground chamber complexes demonstrate construction capabilities exceeding documented ancient technologies. The flood narratives preserve technical specifications with cross-cultural consistency that defies independent invention explanations. The precision stone cutting at geographically separated sites shows identical advanced techniques that suggest coordinated instruction. The astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient calendars required observational programs spanning centuries before the civilizations that employed them officially existed. The medical and pharmaceutical knowledge preserved in ancient texts demonstrates understanding of human anatomy and biochemistry that should have required systematic scientific research programs. The genetic evidence from elite burials confirms physiological distinctions that support textual accounts of bloodline preservation programs. The cyclical pattern of civilizational development described in Sumerian texts finds support in geological evidence for catastrophic events that periodically disrupted human societies. The Younger Dryas climate disruption, the widespread flood deposits in Mesopotamian archaeological strata, and the deliberate burial of sites like Göbekli Tepe all indicate that advanced capabilities existed during earlier periods than conventional chronologies recognize, followed by catastrophic interruptions that necessitated civilizational reconstruction. The knowledge preservation systems documented in temple archives, the encoding of technical information within religious texts, and the establishment of hereditary priesthoods all represent deliberate strategies for maintaining essential knowledge through periods of disruption. The departure accounts from late Sumerian texts describe not permanent abandonment, but temporary withdrawal, with established protocols for monitoring human progress and potential return during future crisis periods. The return prophecies based on astronomical calculations demonstrate that this withdrawal was understood as one phase in ongoing cycles of presence and absence, governed by celestial mechanics and human developmental milestones. The precision of these prophetic calculations and their verification through modern astronomical analysis lends credibility to the framework they present. For contemporary humanity, these revelations carry profound implications. We stand at a moment when multiple global crises, environmental degradation, technological disruption, social fragmentation converge in patterns that ancient texts identified as triggers for return intervention. The astronomical calculations preserved in Mesopotamian prophecies indicate current time periods correspond with predicted return windows. Whether these ancient predictions prove accurate remains to be seen, but the evidence demands that we take seriously the possibility that human civilization has developed under sustained guidance from advanced sources who retain interest in our continued survival and evolution. Understanding this relationship and preparing for its potential next phase may prove crucial for successfully navigating the unprecedented challenges that confront our species in the coming decades.